Chapter 1227. Have they found the sword lady you're looking for? Late at night, when Guhan was a little sleepy, a person that Guhan didn't expect suddenly appeared by his side and asked him. She's hiding very well. We haven't found her yet. Guhan replied faintly, then looked curiously at Shishue in front of him. This was probably the first time she took the initiative to talk to him since she awakened her memory. If you can't find her, will you die? Shishue asked a very sharp question. I can't say that I will definitely die. Guhan thought about it, then shook his head and said, according to Zhuxian, the moment my body in reality turns back into Guhan, my half-synchronized body will collapse. But this doesn't mean that I'll die. I feel that if I prepare enough Emperor's blood, I might be able to recreate a perfect body before my body completely collapses. Is the possibility of this very high? I don't know about this. After all, this is the first time I've done this kind of thing. Even if my body can be preserved, the synchronized Zhuxian sword will definitely not be preserved. Maybe my life as a sword wielder will be frozen at the spirit sword level. Guhan was speaking the truth. It's best if you die, Shishue said in a strange tone, then pointed at the television in front of Guhan. Watch the television, you might have an unexpected harvest. Watch the television? Guhan wanted to ask more, but Shishue had already turned into a sword light and returned to Guhan's scabbard. Although he was a little confused about Shishue's actions, Guhan still turned on the television. It was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. Although most of the television stations were still broadcasting programs, they were basically replays of some TV dramas or commercials. They were considered to be programs without any substance. Guhan didn't know why the past water sword wanted him to turn on the TV, but Guhan believed that Shishue wouldn't be speaking without thinking. He flipped through the channels one by one, stopping at each channel for more than 10 seconds to carefully observe the programs being broadcasted. However, he didn't find any valuable clues until Guhan flipped to Shanghai Satellite TV. The Shanghai Municipal Party Secretary is holding an expanded meeting of the Shanghai Standing Committee today to discuss the large-scale public security chaos that has occurred in Shanghai in the past few days. After a full and democratic discussion, the meeting has decided on the handling of the public security rectification in Shanghai. We have decided to carry out a special sorting out of the public security situation in Shanghai in the next few days. The specific handling opinions are as follows. At this time, Shanghai Satellite TV was replaying the daily Shanghai news. In the eyes of some young people, this might be a boring TV program, but when Guhan saw this, he stopped changing the channel. Instead, he started to watch the entire news seriously, not even letting go of some of the details on the TV screen. It was not until this news finished and the entertainment news shifted to a certain celebrity who might have gone to the United States to get pregnant that Guhan suddenly turned off the TV. Strange. Guhan rubbed his chin and thought for a while. Then, he immediately jumped up from the sofa and ran to the villa's computer. After typing a few words, he began to frantically search for news on the internet. As a result, the more Guhan looked, the more shocked he became. Finally, he slapped the computer table and shouted excitedly, "Found it!" Early in the morning, at the entrance of the villa in the first courtyard of the Provincial Party Committee, which was the most discussed topic on Shanghai's government forum, a few people suddenly fell from the sky. The surrounding guards were shocked and immediately pulled out their police guns. In the end, before they could open fire, they were sent flying more than 10 meters away by an invisible airflow. They fell unconscious on the spot. The people who appeared on the guardrail were naturally Guhan and his sword lady. He didn't know if everyone had noticed a detail. Ever since Guhan came to this world, he had at most knocked out the police officers. He had never killed a police officer, even if they were just illusions derived from the illusion. Open. With a swing of Guhan's sword chi, the tightly closed door of the first courtyard was directly blasted open by Guhan. Guhan left with his sword lady and walked into the most mysterious house in Shanghai. You terrorists, just like what the secretary said, actually dare to cause trouble here. Arrest all of them. Suddenly, the lights in the room were turned on. Countless police officers rushed out from all corners of the house. Hundreds of black muzzles were aimed at Guhan and the others at the same time. Lady Juetian, since you have recovered your memory, You should understand that these illusions of mortals can't do any harm to me. If you let them stay here, they will only die. Guhan did not care about these police officers at all. Instead, he shouted at the second floor of the villa. When these police officers heard Guhan say that they were only going to die, they immediately felt a little angry. However, when they saw these terrorists clearly, they were very surprised in their hearts. Most of these terrorists were actually women, and extremely beautiful women at that. In the middle of these beautiful women, there was a man who was surrounded and protected like a star. He seemed to be the master of these women. This made the police officers very unhappy. What was wrong with the world now? Why were the bad people's lives so free and easy? Just as the police officers who were very unhappy were about to open fire and teach these terrorists a lesson, a police officer suddenly saw a familiar figure among them and screamed, "Captain Cow, why are you here?" "Oh, it's Little Song. Didn't you tell me that you have something to do tonight and can't work overtime?" Yi Tian looked in the direction of the voice and found that the person who was talking to him was actually a criminal police officer under him. Moreover, it was an elite criminal police officer who could shoot 10 times at a distance of 50 meters. "Captain Cow. It's actually Captain Cow." The other police officers also recognized Yi Tian. What a joke! Yi Tian was a legendary figure in the police world of Shanghai. He was an expert in solving cases, and there was a high possibility that he would take over as the director of Shanghai's Public Security Bureau. Why was he mixed with terrorists and attacked the house of the municipal party secretary? This was simply making these criminal police officers feel like their worldview was going to explode. "Hey, what are you guys still doing here? Get rid of all these police officers so that Juexian doesn't run away again. This city is so big, and it's also Juexian's territory. If she runs away, I guarantee that you guys won't be able to find her," Shen Yuan urged impatiently. "That's right, we might as well kill all these police officers. It's just an illusion anyway," Zhu Xian nodded and said. At the same time, the dagger in his hand trembled slightly, looking like he was about to attack. "No. You can't." Seeing this scene, Yi Tian suddenly jumped out and blocked in front of Shen Yuan and Zhu Xian. "They are all my subordinates, I can't let them die in our hands." "Yi Tian, have you lost your mind? You know that this is all an illusion. They aren't real life. Killing them is just like popping a soap bubble," Shen Yuan said in confusion. "I don't care if they are illusions or not. In my memory, they are my brothers who have gone through life and death with me. Even if they are illusions, I will not let them die in my hands. Do you understand how I feel?" Yi Tian shouted. "You know Yi Tian's personality, so you're trying to use these people to stall for time?" Guhan looked at the densely packed police officers. These police officers were probably also worried about Yi Tian, so they didn't pull the trigger in their hands. Sigh. Guhan sighed, then clapped his hands and said, "I can understand how Yi Tian feels. How about this? You guys slowly deal with these police officers. Be careful not to kill them, just knock them out. As for Juexian, leave it to me." "Guhan, won't this be dangerous? Maybe this is Juexian's intention, he wants to temporarily separate you from us," Chidian said with some worry. "It's fine. At most, I'll be kicked out. It's no big deal." After speaking, Guhan picked up Zhu Xian and returned her to the body of the sword. Then, he flew up to the second floor. "Open fire." These police officers were worried about Yi Tian, but definitely not Guhan. When they saw Guhan come out, they immediately shot at Guhan's head. However, what kind of person was Guhan? The Zhu Xian sword in his hand was impenetrable. These bullets couldn't hurt Guhan at all. At the same time, the sword maidens in the hall spread out in all directions. They rushed into the crowd of police officers and started a hand-to-hand fight with them. During the hand-to-hand fight, the police officers didn't dare to open fire. They were surrounded by their colleagues. If they fired a bullet, they might accidentally kill their brothers. So, the police officers who were entangled by the sword maidens could only put their pistols aside and started a hand-to-hand fight with the sword maidens. As a result, the whole situation became chaotic. No one noticed Guhan, who was the first to fly up to the second floor. Guhan quickly went from the second floor to the third floor. There were many rooms on the third floor, but most of the doors were closed. Only one room's door was open. Guhan walked directly through the door and saw a person in a chiffon bra lying lazily on the bed. She was holding a hardcover novel in her hand. Her two slender white legs were crossed together. Her smooth skin was especially attractive. Under this thin gauze undergarment, this person's body was completely empty. Guhan could even clearly see the two red cherries and the pitch-black forest through the thin gauze undergarment. Big sister told me that you're a black-bellied and heartless person. It seems that she was wrong today. You should be an indecisive and soft-hearted person. Seeing Guhan appear in the room, the person wasn't surprised at all. She only mocked him. I have to be heartless to my enemies. But be it Yi Tian or these police officers, they're not my enemies. Why would I do such a heartless thing? Guhan pursed his lips. The person in front of him looked exactly like the Zhuxian sword. It was as if they were carved from the same mold. From this, it could be inferred that this person was undoubtedly Lady Juexian. He had finally found this well-hidden person after going through so much trouble. Who would have thought that the person in charge of Shanghai, the secretary of Shanghai's municipal committee, was actually Lady Juexian? Celestial Bane has already contacted you. Guhan recalled that Juexian had mentioned Celestial Bane and asked curiously. If Zhuxian had already contacted Juexian, why didn't they tell him where Juexian was? Not really. It's just that my big sister and I are one. When she entered this world, she woke me up. I checked her memories and found out everything, Juexian explained with a smile. So, you're the one who arranged the identities of the sword ladies and the others in this world. Guhan's eyes lit up. I'm not interested in your other sword ladies. Their identities were randomly arranged by this world. I only interfered with the arrangements of two of them. Juexian raised two fingers. Zhuxian and Shenyuan? Guhan said as if he suddenly realized something. Bingo. Sister Zhuxian and that little B*tch Shenyuan are a lesbian couple. Isn't that interesting? You don't know this, but I've been secretly observing them. Looking at the two of them together, and recalling the scenes of them fighting to the death in the past, I almost died of laughter. This is really too funny. If only Sister Trapping Immortal and Sister Killing Immortal were here, then they could share my happiness. Juexian laughed loudly, his face full of joy from playing a prank. I think if your big sister knew that you did something behind her back, she would not let you live a good life, Guhan said, pouring cold water on him. That's for the future, we'll talk about it later. Right now, I just want to know, how did you know I was here? You shouldn't have been able to find any clues. Juexian put down the novel in his hand. Guhan glanced at it and realized that the novel was called Sword Lady. Didn't you already guess that we would find you? Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many policemen in the villa, Guhan said lightly. I only transferred these policemen over as a precaution. I didn't think that you had the ability to find this place, but it seems that I miscalculated. Juexian smiled faintly. Tell me, how did you find me? It was a news program, Guhan said. News program? That's right. I watched the rebroadcast of Shanghai News tonight. As a result, I found that although this news was about the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee meeting, as the main character of the meeting, the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee secretary never appeared on camera. Whenever the camera wanted to skip the chairman's position, it would deliberately cut down, thus omitting it. In this 3-minute-long news, as the protagonist, the party secretary of the Municipal Party Committee, doesn't even show his face, not even a part of his body is shown. This is too strange. The party secretaries of other provinces and cities don't have such a hobby. And in the press release, they only addressed you as the Municipal Party Committee Secretary, not in the format of Municipal Party Committee Secretary plus name. This is also extremely abnormal. After watching the news, I went online to look up a lot of information. In the end, I found that the name and photo of the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee Secretary couldn't be found on the entire internet. It was as if this person didn't exist at all. Even Baidu Encyclopedia wasn't established. The only person who could do this is you, who controlled this illusion. Only you would hide your identity like this. I see. I didn't expect to fall here. You are really as smart as my sister said. Juexian's sword nodded, then got up from the bed and walked elegantly to Guhan. He wrapped his hands around Guhan's neck, and his body was very close to Guhan. The closest place was less than a centimeter away. Guhan could even feel the heat emitted from the two cherries. I know why you're looking for me. You want me to become your sword lady, right? Juexian's sword's tongue licked Guhan's face. This lick didn't have the slightest hint of ambiguity. It felt more like he was tasting Guhan's taste. Let's make a bet. If you win, I'll go out with you. If you lose, you give up on my sister and let her stay in this illusion with me. Chapter 12:28. Bet. What bet? As soon as Guhan's voice fell, hurried footsteps came from the door, followed by Guhan's sword maidens. Seeing Juexian hugging her man so ambiguously, Qiuanjian couldn't help but feel jealous. She rushed forward to push Juexian away. Unexpectedly, someone was one step ahead of her. Shenyuan's sword appeared first, and pushed Juexian onto the bed. You bastard swordswoman. You were the one who arranged everything between me and Zhuxian. Xuanyuan's intelligence actually worked, and he guessed that Juexian was the mastermind. Hey, Mr. Guhan and I were having a good discussion. Why did you come out to disturb us? Juexian rolled her eyes at Shenyuan, then looked at Guhan again. Mr. Guhan, what do you think? Do you want to make a bet? All right, let's bet. Guhan nodded. To be honest, this illusion was controlled by Juexian. Juexian had the absolute home field advantage, and he had no idea how to bring Juexian out of this illusion. Moreover, it was almost 6 in the morning. When the illusion ended, Guhan would no longer have a chance, so he could only take the risk and gamble with Juexian. Good. Bring her here. As soon as Celestial Extinguishing Sword's voice fell, a small door in the room opened. 2 maids in maid attire escorted a young girl who was tightly tied up with a rope into the room. Seeing the young girl, Qingpin suddenly let out a scream, her face filled with fear. She instinctively jumped into Guhan's arms, trembling in fear. You lunatic. You actually captured her. Shenyuan also let out a sound of shock. Zhuxian's face was solemn, and the rest of the sword maidens were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was so special about this young girl that caused such a reaction from Qingpin, Zhuxian, and Shenyuan's sword. Hey, we're all old friends, good sisters. There's nothing for me to be afraid of. Juexian smiled, then looked at Guhan. So, do you know this guy? I know him. Guhan nodded solemnly. Guhan, of course, knew this girl. This girl was Qingpin's girl form, and also the hidden danger that Guhan was most afraid of. He didn't expect that she would also come to this illusion. But when she thought about it carefully, it was to be expected. Qingpin and her girl form shared the same body, so it was not strange that their souls would come to this illusion at the same time. It was just that Guhan had forgotten about this for a while, so he didn't take the initiative to look for the young girl, Qingpin. TSK, you don't know, but when I found out that she was here, I was really shocked. The 3 of us haven't seen each other for more than 300,000 years. I didn't expect to meet him in such a place. I'm afraid that even Tongtian couldn't predict this move. You're crazy. You actually called out that person's name. The Shenyuan sword was startled when it heard the immortal slashing sword call out Tongtian's name. What are you afraid of? This is my illusion, he won't be able to detect it. Besides, when the 4 of us rebelled, Tongtian's injuries weren't any lighter than ours. It's still unknown whether he has the strength to take revenge on us now. It's better to be careful. The immortal slashing sword sighed and said, besides, from the fact that Qingping came into being, we can see that the old master's strength should have recovered a lot. Otherwise, how could Qingping have the ability to reveal her true body? Hey, sister, don't scare me. According to what you said, the 4 of us are dead meat. The immortal slashing sword said in shock. You don't have to pretend anymore. Since you've already shared my memory, you should know why I'm here. Since we've started this era, it's also necessary to end this era. What we didn't finish back then will be finished by our hands. This is our last chance. If we miss this chance, we can only return to Hongmeng. So, sister, you chose this man? The immortal slashing sword looked at Guhan. Did I make the wrong choice? Ji Han, no matter if it is his strength, his temperament, his bloodline, or the person behind him, he is the best choice for us. Other than Ji Han, we have no other choice. He's our last chance. You should know this better than I do. The immortal slashing sword said calmly. But sister, don't forget that he's also the person chosen by the old master, Tongtian. If we don't handle it well, he might become our enemy in the future. The immortal slashing sword's expression changed and said with extreme caution. Isn't this interesting? Both sides have chosen the same person. This is our only chance of survival. After all, the old master, Tongtian, is still recuperating. However, we can already make preparations in advance. The immortal slashing sword also looked at Guhan's body. We're his sword maidens. Once this fact is confirmed, even the old master can't do anything about it. This is our only chance of winning. Sigh, if it's possible, I really want to wag my tail and beg the old master. I might as well become his primordial cardinal treasure again. If this world is destroyed, then so be it. What does that have to do with us? It's better than being like this. Not only do we have to live in fear, we also have to fight a battle that has almost no chance of winning. Look at what happened to sister trapping immortal and sister killing immortal. Since we've chosen the path back then, there's no medicine for regret. We can't escape this fate. The immortal slashing sword sighed. Sister Juetian, stop fooling around. Come with us. This is the only way out for us 4 sisters. TCH, if I didn't want to go with you, I could have escaped to any corner of this city before you arrived. Why would I wait for you in this house? Juetian curled her lips. But I'm still the immortal slashing sword of the 4 immortal slashing swords, one of the primordial cardinal treasures. How can I be so shameful and follow this man? I've already said that as long as he completes the bet, I'll leave with you. Otherwise, I'll continue to live in this illusion. In any case, one day in this illusion can be used as 12 days. It's very enjoyable. Guhan, what are they talking about? I don't understand a single word. Chi-Chi tugged at Guhan's sleeve and asked curiously. They're talking about something very important. Guhan took a deep breath. Although I don't really understand, the 4 of them seem to be involved in the fate of the entire world. Why do I feel that the birth and appearance of the Great Apocalypse is due to these 4 swords, Tongtian, and the Qingping sword? What? You're trying to scare me. Chi-Chi was also shocked. This matter sounded too frightening. Master. After ending its conversation with its sister, the immortal slashing sword walked to Guhan's side and looked at Guhan deeply. Then it said, Master, there are some things that are not yet the time to say. Master, it's good that you heard what I said just now. You can think about it in secret, but after you leave this illusion, you must not talk about it to anyone, especially the name Tongtian. Otherwise, there will be a heavenly Tao in the unseen world. You will encounter unimaginable danger. I understand. Guhan nodded and looked at Juetian. Tell me, what do you want me to do? It's very simple. The immortal slashing sword spread its hands. Defeat her. You can choose any of the sword maidens here. As long as you can defeat her before the reincarnation cycle of this world, I'll be yours. As soon as the immortal slashing sword finished speaking, the rope that was tied around the young girl's body fell. Then, the immortal slashing sword's finger lightly touched the young girl's forehead. The young girl, who had been at a loss just a moment ago, instantly regained her senses. She jumped up from the ground like an agile rabbit and looked at the surrounding sword maidens vigilantly. Immortal slashing sword. It's you. The young girl, Qingpin, was the first to see the immortal slashing sword beside her. Then, she saw the immortal slashing sword and screamed again. When she finally saw the Shenyuan sword, the young girl, Qingpin, had calmed down and did not scream anymore. Instead, when she saw Guhan, her face revealed a look of disbelief. She pointed at the immortal slashing sword's nose and said, Crazy. You 4 sisters are crazy. Do you still want to fight? Don't you know that when Master comes out of seclusion, the whole world will be destroyed? You actually have the guts to fight Master. Could it be that if we don't fight, Master will let us go? The immortal slashing sword snorted coldly. Qingping, I advise you not to help the Avile door. If you stand on our side, it will also be of great benefit to you. I, Qingping, am not that stupid to join the side that is bound to lose. Qingping said disdainfully. Don't deceive yourself. When the world is destroyed, the primordial cardinal treasures that were born with this world will also return to the primordial cardinal treasures. Even if you stand on his side and hug his thigh, you will not be able to avoid death. The immortal slashing sword said indifferently. Nonsense. Master promised me. He will bring me through this reincarnation. The only ones who will perish together with me are you traitors. Qingping shrieked. Her voice was so sharp that it pierced through everyone's eardrums. Don't lie to yourself. Your voice has already revealed the panic in your heart. The four of us know better than you what kind of person sect leader Tongtian is. Otherwise, we would not have betrayed this old master who has followed us for millions of years. The immortal slashing sword sighed. Come with us. Only then will you have a chance of survival. The chance you are talking about is him. Qingping pointed at Guhan's nose. Do you need me to tell you who he is? He is a chess piece set by the old master. From the moment he was born, he was the old master's weapon. You are actually counting on this person to win a chance of survival. You are too ridiculous. Life is death, and death is life. Life is death, and death is life. Death and life are intertwined. The reversal of life might result in death, and the reversal of death might also result in life. In fact, this person has already deviated from the path of Tongtian. Otherwise, Jiyu Xuanwu wouldn't have left, Yi Qing wouldn't have appeared, and Artoria would still be King Arthur. I'm afraid these things are not part of Tongtian's plan. A joyful smile appeared on Xuanyuan's face. Suddenly, she thought of something and patted her head with a smile. By the way, the biggest surprise is this little guy, Qingpin. You didn't expect that you have already broken away from sect leader Tongtian's plan, right? You. The expression on Qingping's face changed several times in an instant. She even faintly showed signs of being persuaded by the immortal slashing sword dynasty. However, Qingping's face finally calmed down. She recovered her calm expression and said faintly, the path has been chosen. Let's see who will reach the end first. Tell me, what do you plan to do now? Kill me. But I have to tell you, if I die, that little idiot will also die with me. We are originally one. No. Hearing Qingping's words, Guhan let out a low roar and instinctively hugged Qingping tightly in his arms. He could not let his most beloved cute guy die. Haha. Qingping laughed. Seeing Guhan's expression, she was even more relieved. Then you guys can fight. Celestial Extinguishing Sword smiled and said, this is also my dreamland. I will be the judge. You fight with Guhan. If you win, I will let you out. But if you lose, you will stay in this dreamland with me for a few hundred reincarnations. How about that? Strange, the stakes that the Celestial Extinguishing Sword had mentioned to Qingping seemed to be in conflict with the stakes that she had agreed on with Jiyu Han. If Jiyu Han had won, he would have taken the Celestial Extinguishing Sword and left. How could he have accompanied the Qingping sword through hundreds of reincarnations in the illusion realm? Forget it. It seems that Celestial Extinguishing Sword won't lie to me. Perhaps she has her own considerations. Guhan thought for a moment and decided to keep his mouth shut, so as not to ruin Celestial Extinguishing Sword's plan. All right. Qingping nodded in agreement. But there is one thing I must say. I can't use any power in your dreamland. You either let go of my power or restrict his. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Celestial Extinguishing Sword shook its head. If you use the Sword of Severing Dao, even 10 Guhan won't be a match for you. So I will simply seal all your powers and let you return to the level of an ordinary person. Then, we will use pure swordsmanship to determine the winner. Using pure swordsmanship? Qingping seemed to be a little hesitant. What? Qingping Sword Lady, who suppresses everywhere in our Jie school, doesn't even have the courage to compete with an ordinary person in his 20s? Shenyuan Sword said sarcastically. Let's compete then. How can I, a carnate cardinal treasure, lose to an ordinary person? Qingping Sword's expression turned cold as she agreed to this request. However, She turned to Shenyuan's sword and said, "My sword is with that little fool. How about I borrow your body?" This. Shenyuan's sword rolled its eyes and pondered for a while with some difficulty. Finally, it sighed and said, "All right, who asked me to be afraid of you?" With that, Shenyuan's sword transformed into its sword form and landed in Qingping's hand. "I still have the celestial slaying sword and the celestial extinguishing sword here. Choose one. I won't take advantage of you with my sword," Qingping said as she pointed the Shenyuan sword at Guhan's head. "Mr. Guhan, between me and my sister, who are you going to choose?" The celestial extinguishing sword hugged its sister's arm and asked Guhan coquettishly. At the same time, it naughtily cupped its sister's breasts, as if it was using its sister's breasts to entice Guhan to choose it. The celestial slaying sword didn't say anything, as if it had already tacitly agreed to let its sister play with its body. "No, since it's a battle with Miss Qingping, it's better to use this sword." Guhan waved his hand and rejected the celestial slaying sword and the celestial extinguishing sword. Then, he carried Qingping, who was hiding in his arms and trembling in fear, out. "No, I'm scared." The moment Guhan poured it out, Qingping was so scared that it wanted to hide again. "Qingping, oh, Qingping." Guhan gently stroked Qingping's long hair. "Look, from today onwards, I will be your courage. You must remember, I am your sword wielder, and you are my sword mistress. I won't let you have any more fear." With that, Guhan grabbed Qingping's neck. Qingping's body stiffened, and then it instantly transformed into Qingping's sword. Swish, swish, swish. Guhan brandished his sword and finally faced the Shenyuan sword in Qingping's hand. He said indifferently, "I will let you know who the real Qingping is." Chapter 1229. How could this be? Looking at Qingping, who had been knocked to the ground by his sword, Guhan felt a little incredulous. In less than a minute, Qingping had been knocked to the ground by him. If he had not been merciful just now, Qingping's throat would probably have been slit by him. This caught Guhan off guard. Guhan had thought that he would have a fierce battle with Qingping. At the very least, he would only be able to defeat Qingping when both of them were injured. Even Guhan was prepared to be defeated by Qingping. After all, from the conversation between the three of them just now, he knew that Qingping, like the four immortal vanquishing swords, was once the sword of a super-powerful big boss, Grandmaster Tongtian. Guhan had thought that Qingping's swordsmanship should at least reach the realm of rules. But Guhan had never imagined that Qingping's swordsmanship was only SOSO. By the way, after Guhan came to this world, in addition to conquering his own sword mistress, he had also gone to the bookstore and bought a lot of books. It should be known that in the future of the culture destruction, every book before the destruction was precious, especially the investiture of the gods, which was the focus of Guhan's attention. And Guhan had indeed found a complete set of the investiture of the gods novel in the bookstore. Unfortunately, when Guhan flipped through these books, he was surprised to find that all the books only had empty covers, and the inside of the books were all blank sheets of paper. The other humans in the illusion did not care about this at all, as if they were looking at books full of words. Of course, it was not completely without gain. At the very least, Guhan did not know much about the ancient times before the destruction, which was the era of the Celestial Empire. When he returned to reality, he could basically crush any expert professor who specialized in the study of the history of the Celestial Empire. "When did your swordsmanship enter the realm of rules?" Qingping struggled to get up from the ground and looked at Ji Yuhan with some fear in her eyes. She had never imagined that this man who had just become a swordsman a few years ago had already practiced his swordsmanship to the point where he could comprehend the laws. This was too terrifying. It really is the realm of rules. On the other side, Juxian's mouth was so wide open that an apple could almost fit inside. She knew from Celestial Bane's memories that Guhan's swordsmanship had reached the realm of rules. However, this was merely knowing. From the bottom of her heart, she still did not believe that Guhan could reach such a level. It was only when she personally witnessed Guhan using sword techniques with rules that she had no choice but to admit this fact. "What surprised me was you, Miss Qingping. You are unexpectedly weak," Guhan said indifferently. "You." Qingping was so angry that her face turned red. She retorted loudly, I'm a sword maiden who's not good at swordsmanship. I'm a sword maiden that master uses to carry the Dao. Otherwise, if you let me use the sever Dao, I guarantee that you won't live for more than 10 seconds. Sigh, to be fair, although Qingping's swordsmanship is the worst among the 5 of us, she's still an expert in swordsmanship that only appears once in 100 years outside. You can only blame yourself for being a little too abnormal. Not only have you entered the realm of rules, but you've also used sword techniques in the realm of rules right from the start. Under rules, everyone is an ant. It's already very impressive that Qingping was able to hold out for a minute. Zhu Xian tried to smooth things over. However, what she said was very reasonable, and it was the truth. Because Gu Han was very afraid of Qingping, he used his strongest move right from the start. He was not like those Ultraman, who had to wait until the last moment to use their ultimate move. It was not like he was looking for trouble. Qingping, you lost the bet. You've already lost. Don't tell me you've forgotten what you promised me. Zhu Xian suddenly revealed her fox's tail. She moved closer to Qingping and said slyly, you promised me that you would accompany me through 100 reincarnations here. Don't even think about it. Unexpectedly, Qingping turned hostile and pushed Zhu Xian away with a slap. At the same time, countless streams of air swirled around the surface of her body, and her entire temperament changed in an instant. Her entire body was filled with an extremely sharp killing intent. Under the effect of this killing intent, the various types of furniture in the room were sliced open, and in the end, the entire furniture was turned into a pile of debris. She was actually able to do this with just her killing intent. From this, it could be seen how terrifying Qingping was at this moment. Qingping, you actually used Intercept Dao. You've broken your promise. Don't you want your face anymore? Zhu Xian loudly scolded when she saw Qingping's state. Get lost. I, Qingping, have not lost yet. I will not lose to a mortal. Qingping's face revealed a hint of madness. After saying that, Qingping pointed her sword at Gu Han's head. I'll give you a chance now. As long as you admit defeat in front of me, I'll let you go. Otherwise, with my Intercept Dao, even if the 2 of them join forces, they won't be able to defeat me. Gu Han, you'd better listen to her and admit defeat. Right now, you're not a match for Intercept Dao. Zhu Xian anxiously moved to Gu Han's side to persuade him. For Zhu Xian to say such words, it was clear that this Intercept Dao was no joke. What's there to be afraid of? It's good to fight. After all, this is my world. Even if Gu Han dies, I can still resurrect him. It's no big deal. Zhu Xian also moved over and said. However, this didn't sound right. It was as if Zhu Xian had already tacitly agreed that Gu Han would lose. Return my power to me. Gu Han sighed and said to Zhu Xian, who was beside him. What? Do you really want to fight with Qingping, who has thrown away her face and used Intercept Dao? You're making a big joke. Zhu Xian covered his mouth and laughed. At the same time, he gently wiped his finger on Gu Han's buttocks. The previously sealed sword essence instantly returned to Gu Han's body. Gu Han once again changed from an ordinary person to a spirit sword level sword wielder. Fine, let him fight. Knowing the power of Intercept Dao in advance, when he faces sect leader Tongtian in the future, he won't be beaten into a fool. Zhu Xian sighed and no longer tried to stop Gu Han. Use me. Right now, Qingping is not a match for Shen Yuan's sword. If you use me, you still have the power to fight. Zhu Xian took the initiative to transform into a sword form and floated in front of Gu Han, trying to make Gu Han use him in the fight. Sorry, this is Qingping's fight. Gu Han pushed away Zhu Xian in front of him and slowly walked toward Qingping with Qingping in his hand. Ignorant person, do you think you can be a match for me when I use Intercept Dao? Qingping held Shen Yuan's sword horizontally in front of her. A white lotus with 24 petals floated out of Qingping's body and floated quietly, as if it was a world of its own. Oh my god, the 12th grade golden lotus of fate, the 12th grade golden lotus of hellfire, the 12th grade golden lotus of virtue. Is sect leader Tongtian trying to fuse the golden lotus of creation again? Seeing the white lotus with 24 petals floating out of Qingping's body, Zhu Xian said with a look of horror on his face. This is expected. Without the 36th grade golden lotus of creation, sect leader Tongtian would not have such an idea. Zhu Xian seemed to have expected this, but he was very cautious when looking at the 24 petals white lotus. The 36th grade golden lotus of creation has been reborn into 24 petals. The day of sect leader Tongtian's return is not far. Once all 36 petals return, I'm afraid it will be the day of sect leader Tongtian's return. Then let's destroy this 24 petals lotus now, Zhu Xian said eagerly as he turned his wrist. No, this lotus, Qingping, and Qingpin are one. If you destroy this lotus, you will destroy Qingpin. He will fight you to the death, Zhu Xian said as he pressed Zhu Xian's wrist. Let's fight him to the death. We two sisters will join hands. He can't beat us, Zhu Xian said proudly. Perhaps he is indeed no match for us, but destroying this lotus will only delay the time of sect leader Tongtian's return. After 1,000 years, where can we find a second Guhan to be sect leader Tongtian's opponent? Zhu Xian said. So, are we just going to watch Tongtian recover his strength? Zhu Xian was still unwilling to accept the outcome. I said, this is our last battle with sect leader Tongtian. If he doesn't recover his strength, how can he come out and fight us? This battle will happen sooner or later. It's better to fight sooner rather than later. The earlier it ends, the better. In the end, Zhu Xian persuaded Zhu Xian to give up on destroying the unformed 36 petals of the golden lotus of creation. Guhan, I don't want to hurt you. It's not too late for you to surrender now. Otherwise, once my petals fall, you will become worse than a dog, Qingping said. Unfortunately, Guhan ignored her and continued to walk toward Qingping. Then don't blame me, Qingping said with her cherry lips. Intercept. Vision. A white petal floated down from the lotus and flew toward Guhan's forehead. Seeing this petal, Guhan's pupils shrank. In an instant, he had thought of thousands of ways to avoid this petal. However, when Guhan tried to avoid it, he realized that none of the ways would work. This was simply an unavoidable petal. Cut. In the end, Guhan decided to use the blade of his sword to cut the petal. However, when Guhan's Qingpin sword came into contact with the petal actually melted into the body of the Qingpin sword. Idiot, he's using the Qingpin sword to attack the petal. Doesn't he know that the Qingpin sword and the petal are one? Zhu Xian stomped his feet anxiously when he saw Guhan's actions. I should have tried to dissuade him and let him use me to fight. Unfortunately, it's too late, Celestial Bane said regretfully as his heart sank. It was indeed too late. When the petal melted into the Qingpin sword, Guhan felt his vision go black. It was as if someone had turned on a lamp. The entire world turned dark and he could no longer see any light. You deprived me of my sight. Guhan was not an idiot. He recalled Qingping's intercept, vision and realized that Qingping's intercept Dao was probably intercepting the opponent's 5 senses or even more than the 5 senses. Let's finish this quickly. I have to get rid of her before she intercepts more of my abilities. Guhan was shocked. He no longer dared to underestimate her. He ran as fast as he could. At the same time, countless sword qi gushed out of the Qingping sword and slashed at Qingping's body. Another petal of sever qi floated down. The sword qi that was like a ferocious tiger disappeared without a trace in an instant, as if it had never existed. She can even intercept sword qi. Jiyu Han was even more shocked in his heart. It could even intercept the sword qi that had already been released. This Dao interception was really terrifying to the extreme. That's right, Guhan did not have much time to think. Although he could not see, Guhan knew that he was already very close to Qingping. He had to quickly defeat his opponent before Qingping intercepted more of his abilities. Intercept, Void Qingping snorted coldly. Another petal fell. Guhan's sword that could have slashed at his opponent missed. Guhan could not see what was happening, but the other sword ladies could see it clearly. Qingping was clearly standing in front of Guhan, but no matter how Guhan attacked, he could not hurt her. Amazing. She can even intercept the void. Zhu Xian exclaimed in admiration. She had already realized that Qingping had cut off the space at her location. Now, Ji Han and her opponent were separated by a mirror. Of course, it was impossible for her to attack Qing Ping in the mirror. Intercept. Listen. Another white lotus petal floated down and fused with the solid cold body. This time, Gu Han found that he had lost his sense of hearing. He could no longer hear anything from the outside. Intercept. Touch. Qing Ping continued to deprive Gu Han of his various abilities. This time, it was Gu Han's turn to lose his sense of touch. Gu Han could no longer sense anything through any part of his body. Intercept. Defend. The eighth petal fell. Gu Han lost control of his limbs again. No part of his body responded to Gu Han's commands. At this time, Gu Han, who had lost his four basic abilities of sight, hearing, touch, and defense, seemed to have become a prisoner. At this time, no matter how good Gu Han's swordsmanship was, it was useless. Gu Han had lost all control of his body. Right now, Gu Han was like a piece of meat thrown on a chopping board. He lay on the ground motionlessly, without any reaction. Gu Han. Chidian, who was watching the battle from the side, could no longer suppress his worry and impulsiveness. He rushed to Gu Han's side and shook Gu Han's body with all his might, trying to make his man recover. But it was useless. Gu Han was still like a piece of dead meat. Big brother. Du Yu pinched Gu Han's nose. If it was in the past, Gu Han would definitely pinch his nose instead. But now, Gu Han did nothing. This idiot, it's good that he admitted defeat. Yi Tian also walked to Gu Han's side. Although he didn't rub Gu Han's body like Chidian and Du Yu, and although he mocked him without holding back, the worry on his face couldn't be concealed. I'm going to kill you. Ju's reaction was a little more direct. He picked up his Juzi sword and planned to fight to the death with Qing Ping. However, he was quickly blocked by Zhu Xian. Stop shaking. It's useless. Gu Han can't do anything now. Shui said faintly. She was the first victim of the interception. She had also experienced the feeling of Ji Han at this moment. She clearly knew how terrible and terrifying this experience was. You can admit defeat now. Although he had lost his five senses, Qing Ping's voice could still be transmitted to Gu Han's consciousness. No, I will defeat you. Although he had become a piece of dead meat, Gu Han was still Gu Han. Chapter 1230. The Qingpin sword in Gu Han's hand suddenly flew up and floated weakly in the air. It made a slashing motion towards where Qingping was standing. Even though Gu Han had lost his five senses, Gu Han could still use the sword essence in his body to control the Qingpin sword to attack. However, such an attack was too weak and pathetic. You're courting death. Qingping's expression became even more furious. She seemed to be unable to accept that the current Gu Han still had the will to resist her. Just like in the movie Kung Fu, Zhu Xingchen, whose head was buried in the ground, still picked up a piece of wood and hit the fire cloud heretic god's bald head in the face of his threat. Although this piece of wood couldn't cause any harm to the fire cloud heretic god, the unyielding resistance still made the fire cloud heretic god feel the most furious he had ever been in his life. This was because he knew that this was an opponent that he didn't know how to truly defeat and make him submit. At this moment, the white lotus floating in front of Qingping's sword dropped its petals again. However, it wasn't just one petal this time, but a total of 6 petals. Previously, Qingping had only needed to use one petal to cut off vision, hearing, and the void. But now, she had used 6 petals in one go. From this, it could be seen that the power she used this time was even more terrifying. Intercept times sword essence. Qingping's sword said in a low voice. She had never expected that Qingping's sword would target the sword essence. The sword essence in Gu Han's body was enormous. If she wanted to intercept the sword essence in Gu Han's body, she would naturally need a great deal of power. This explained why she had used up 6 petals. As the 6 petals fell, Gu Han completely lost contact with the sword essence in his body, not even the slightest bit of connection. He couldn't even sense his purple mansion or the sword mark. Gu Han was like a human trapped in a black hole. He no longer had anything to do with this world. Just admit defeat. Qingping's voice suddenly appeared in front of Gu Han in the black hole. She looked at Gu Han, who was trapped in her body, and her face was full of pride. If you admit defeat now, I'll let you out. Qing Ping's voice was extremely enticing. Do you think you're too pathetic? Looking at Qing Ping, who had appeared in his consciousness, Guhan did not feel the slightest bit of fear, nor did he shrink back. All he felt was disdain. Is this your power? I'm afraid not. This should be your old master's power. As far as you're concerned, you're just a defeated opponent of mine. Guhan smiled. He smiled very happily. Even if you live for another 3 million years, you still won't be able to compete with me, a human who has only lived for 21 years. Bastard. Qing Ping was infuriated by Guhan's mockery, and her consciousness returned to her body. At the same time, the white lotus in front of her chest started to spin rapidly, and Qing Ping shouted angrily, "Good. Since your swordsmanship is awesome, I'll make sure that you won't be able to use any swordsmanship for the rest of your life." Sever sword this time, Qing Ping actually planned to directly cut off Guhan's swordsmanship. At that moment, the entire lotus had already lost 14 petals, and only 10 petals were left on the lotus head. However, as Qing Ping gave the order, the remaining 10 petals fell one after another. Qing Ping used up all the remaining petals in one go to achieve this order. My swordsmanship. Guhan, who was trapped in his sea of consciousness, had a stiff expression. Then, he felt that a part of his soul seemed to have been lost. When he tried to recall what he had lost, he could not recall it no matter what. Why am I here? Who am I? What am I? What mother? What is that? Endless questions surged in Guhan's consciousness. In Guhan's memory, all memories related to the sword had disappeared, be it words, voice, image, or swordsmanship. All memories were gone. There was no such thing as a sword in Guhan's memory. Ha 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 ha. I've won. How can you be a match for the Sever Dao? The Sever Dao is invincible. Invincible. Looking at Guhan's dazed state, Qing Ping laughed as if she had already won the world. Enough. Qing Ping, you've already won. I represent Guhan in admitting defeat. Let him out. Although he had already anticipated this scene, Zhu Xian still couldn't bear to see it happen. He immediately tried to persuade Qing Ping. Chumph, didn't he not admit defeat? Then let him continue like this. After all, this is your illusion. Even if he doesn't eat anything, he can still live. He's just a vegetable. Qing Ping pouted. Forget it, don't beg her. Sister Zhu Xian, hurry up and push our consciousness out of the illusion. Once we're out of the illusion, we'll be fine, Qidian said angrily. No. Zhu Xian's face showed an awkward expression. The Sever Dao's power is based on the power of the rules. Even if we leave the illusion, the power of the rules will still exist. What do you mean? Hearing Zhu Xian's words, Qidian had a bad feeling. What I mean is, if Qing Ping doesn't remove the Sever Dao, Guhan will continue like this, even if he returns to the real world. Zhu Xian answered for Zhu Xian. How could this be? All the sword maidens in the surroundings revealed expressions of horror. Was Ji Han really going to be a living dead person forever? At that moment, Qing Ping, who was floating in the air, suddenly exploded with a bang. Then, he turned into a cloud of green smoke that enveloped Guhan's body. Finally, he completely disappeared into Guhan's body. This is... Zhu Xian's eyes lit up. He exchanged a look with Zhu Xian. Both of them saw the light of hope in each other's eyes. This guy, have you really forgotten who you are? Seeing this, Qing Ping's face showed a hint of worry. Then, this worry quickly disappeared. There's no point in going. He can't touch my power. Guhan? Guhan? Where are you? Guhan. In his own sea of knowledge, time and space seemed to have lost all concept. Guhan didn't know how much time had passed. He only felt that it was extremely long. It was so long that he almost forgot who he was. However, at that moment, Guhan's consciousness suddenly heard a familiar shout. Guhan saw a pitiful little girl moving aimlessly in his sea of knowledge, shouting, "Why are you looking for me?" Ji Han instantly appeared in front of the little lowly and looked at her in a daze, revealing a puzzled expression. "Guhan, it's me. I'm your little Qing Ping." Qing Ping hugged Guhan's consciousness and shook Guhan with all her might. She hoped that Guhan would reveal a familiar smile. However, Guhan didn't respond. Guhan. Don't be like this. Guhan. Qingpin suddenly hugged Guhan and burst into tears. It's all my fault. Qingpin is useless. Qingpin isn't that bad woman's match. Qingpin doesn't know how to intercept. Qingpin is a useless trash. Qingpin is a big trash. Be good, don't cry. Seeing Qingpin crying, Guhan was extremely panicked. He reached out his hand, wanting to touch Qingpin's head and call out Qingpin's name. However, Qingpin's name was clearly at the tip of his tongue, but Guhan couldn't say it no matter what. Jiyu Han, do you really not remember what it was like to be poor? Qingpin is your sword lady. Qingpin climbed onto Guhan's shoulder with great effort. He pinched Guhan's cheeks and tried hard to make Guhan remember him. Mother. Mother. Guhan kept saying mother, which made Qingpin anxious. He thought that Guhan thought he was his mother. He immediately shouted, Guhan, I'm not your mother. I'm your sword lady. Ah! Guhan's expression suddenly became extremely terrifying. He wanted to say the word sword, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't say it. A powerful conflict was going on in Guhan's soul. As a result, Guhan's soul, which was originally the size of a normal person, began to expand rapidly. At the same time, veins popped out on the surface of his soul. This was a state where the soul energy in his soul was in a crazy state. At this moment, there were two kinds of power in Guhan's body. One was Guhan's own power, while the other was naturally the power of the golden lotus of creation. One sealed Guhan's memory and 5 senses, while the other tried to break the seal. Naturally, there was a huge conflict between the two. It would be fine if this conflict happened somewhere else, but it happened in Guhan's soul. If Guhan's self won, then Guhan would be able to break the seal of the golden lotus of creation. However, if Guhan's soul failed, it meant that Guhan would lose his last bit of self. At that time, Guhan would really become a corpse without a soul. Guhan. Guhan. Seeing Guhan's soul like this, even if Qingpin was ignorant, he knew that things were not good. But now, Guhan's soul had expanded to the size of a hill. Qingpin was not even as tall as one of Guhan's toes. Guhan. Qingpin is here. Qingpin gritted his teeth, then pounced on Guhan's toes and started to climb. Qingpin treated Guhan's soul as a real mountain range. Qingpin climbed with great difficulty. Although this was a mountain range in his sea of consciousness and not a real mountain range, the difficulty of climbing it was not inferior to any real mountain range. A real mountain range had hard rocks that could allow a climber to climb it. However, Guhan's soul was indeed a smooth jelly-like thing. One could imagine the difficulty of climbing a mountain made of jelly. To Qingpin, this was no less than climbing the Himalayas with his bare hands. Qingpin fell countless times. Every time he fell, he was covered in dirt. Although there was no blood on his body, he was pale. This was a sign that the origin of his soul had been damaged. But Qingpin still struggled to climb up, until she finally passed over Guhan's chin and climbed onto Guhan's lips. Guhan. Qingpin called out Guhan's name. Then, she bit her lips and suddenly jumped into Guhan's mouth. Then, she carefully moved down along Guhan's tongue, risking the danger of falling into Guhan's esophagus at any time and becoming Guhan's food. She continued to climb up along Guhan's oral cavity. Finally, she passed through the nasal cavity and entered the core of Guhan's soul, which was the brain. This is it. At this moment, Qingpin saw the 24 petals floating in Guhan's soul brain. These petals were engaged in an intense battle with a sword. This sword had a hilt with the shape of Etienne, the shape of Duyu, the color of Juzi, the pattern of flowing water, the body of the sword with the shape of Shenyuan, the aura of Zhuxian, and the smiling face of Qingpin. Yes, Qingpin's smiling face was engraved on the body of this sword. It was vivid and lifelike, just like the real Qingpin. Guhan. Qingpin understood. This was the true self of Guhan's soul, formed from all the sword maidens he had met in his life. Now, this true self was engaged in a battle of life and death with the 24 petals. Guhan. Qingpin is no longer useless. This time, Qingpin will help you. Qingpin will definitely help Guhan. Qingpin is not useless. Qingpin is not a useless burden. Qingpin's gaze revealed a never-before-seen seriousness. Qingpin had always been joking and carefree. Guhan had never seen Qingpin reveal such a serious expression, as if he was an adult. "You bastard, Qingpin, I'll fight you to the death." Qingpin was as angry as a lion cub. His body instantly transformed into Qingpin's sword and stabbed towards the 24 petals. The 24 petals never thought that a second opponent would appear at this time. The sword formation that surrounded Guhan's true self immediately showed some flaws. This allowed Guhan's true self to seize the opportunity to break free from the encirclement and reunite with Qingpin. The 24 petals seemed to be a little angry at this scene. They simply surrounded Qingpin and Guhan's true self at the same time, planning to kill them together. Needless to say, the 24 petals really did have such strength. This was because even though Qingpin had joined the battle, Qingpin's swordsmanship was too bad. It could be said that she was the worst swordswoman among all of Guhan's sword maidens. When she fought alongside Guhan's true self, it was already a blessing that she did not help. Guhan. Qingpin's sword let out a sorrowful sword hum. She was sorrowful for her own incompetence. She did not expect that her appearance would be so powerless. She hated herself for always being half-hearted when learning swordsmanship. Now, she had become an obstacle for Guhan. Qingpin. Qingpin suddenly heard Guhan's voice. Before she could react to what had happened, she felt her body being hit by Guhan's true self sword. At this moment, a large amount of memories related to the sword surged into Qingpin's consciousness. Only then did Qingpin realize that this was Guhan passing his swordsmanship memory to her through this method. Guhan. The sword around Qingpin's body hummed. After receiving Guhan's swordsmanship memory, Qingpin's sword seemed to have changed into a swordswoman. It was no longer as clumsy as before. Every move became extremely exquisite, and even faintly contained the power of rules. To put it bluntly, Qingpin had already grasped half of Guhan's swordsmanship in an instant. The entire situation had undergone a shocking reversal. Faced with 1.5 Guhan, the 24 petals were no longer able to suppress him. They went from being on the offensive to being on the defensive. They were constantly being beaten back by Qingpin's sword and Guhan's true self, unable to protect their heads or tails. Suddenly, Guhan saw an opportunity. He forcefully separated a petal from the opponent's formation, and then quickly struck it in front of Qingpin's sword. "Eat!" Guhan's voice rang in Qingpin's ears. Without another word, Qingpin immediately turned back into a lowly, opened his mouth and ate the petal. After that, the petal never came out of Qingpin's stomach again. At the same time, this petal became the signal for the opponent to collapse. The 24 petals were already no match for Guhan and Qingpin. After losing one petal, the situation became irreversible. More and more petals were forcefully separated by Guhan's true self, and sent directly into Qingpin's stomach. In the end, it even turned into these petals constantly fleeing, avoiding Qingpin's terrifying big mouth. Damn it! Outside the body, the originally calm Qingpin's expression suddenly changed. Without another word, she stretched out her hand towards Guhan's body and sucked. The white petals from before flew out of Guhan's body. 1, 2, 3, 12. Qingpin's expression was frighteningly ugly. Only 12 of the 24 petals had returned. She couldn't summon half of them back. One could imagine what this meant. This time, she had probably lost all her capital. Chapter 1231. I'm going to kill you. Qingpin's expression changed drastically when she saw that 12 of her petals had disappeared. She grabbed the Shenyuan sword in her hand and swung it at Guhan's head, intending to end Guhan here and now. Why bother? You can't kill me in this illusion. The Shenyuan sword was blocked by Qingpin's sword. Qingpin's expression was as ugly as if she had eaten shit. This was because Guhan was once again standing in front of her with a playful smile on his face. You've already lost. I'm back. Guhan flicked the Shenyuan sword out of Qingpin's hand, then said, All right, Lady Shenyuan, the duel is over. You can come back now. Hehe, I knew you wouldn't be defeated so easily. The Shenyuan sword turned back into its human form in the air and looked at Guhan with a smile on its face. Guhan! Guhan! The other sword ladies also gathered around. Chijian and Duyu were so happy that they cried. Yi Tian was secretly wiping his tears. Juzi was still standing guard silently. Even Celestial Zhu and Celestial Juexian were clapping. Only Shishui stood at the side blankly, as if none of this had anything to do with her. Wishful thinking. Do you really think you've won? I still have 12 petals. Qingping felt extremely unhappy when she saw Guhan being surrounded by so many stars. Her hands trembled, and the lotus in front of her that only had half a petal left began to spin rapidly again. Is that so? But I also have 12 petals. Guhan threw the Qingpin sword in his hand away. Qingpin turned back into a lowly. Then, he copied Qingping and shook his hands as well. A lotus with 12 petals floated in front of Qingpin. This is interesting. You have 12 petals and I also have 12 petals. Who do you think will be the final winner? Guhan said in an extremely infuriating manner. Qingping looked at the lotus on Qingpin's chest and gasped for breath. Her gaze was also somewhat blurred, as if she was unable to accept this reality. But the truth meant that you had to accept it in the end, and there was nothing you could do if you didn't accept it. What a joke. I didn't expect you to become so successful. You two just wait, you won't be able to overturn the heavens. After saying this, Qingping turned into a stream of light and drilled into Qingpin's body, disappearing without a trace. Qingpin, how are you? Seeing Qingpin enter Qingpin's body, Guhan immediately asked with concern. I'm fine. She couldn't beat us, but she was too embarrassed to admit defeat, so she returned to my body and became a coward. Qingpin stuck out his tongue and immediately said, Oh right, Guhan, there's another piece of good news. Now that I have 12 petals, Qingping can forget about threatening and controlling me. She wanted to destroy my consciousness, so I destroyed these 12 petals first. She didn't even have the courage to touch me. Guhan, you don't have to be threatened by her anymore, and you don't have to worry about me anymore, Qingpin said happily, his little face beaming like a flower. Really? Guhan excitedly hugged Qingpin and kissed Qingpin's face a few times. Qingpin's little face turned red from the kisses. All right, you shameless lolicon. Can't you see our Qingpin's face is swollen? Chijian was probably a little jealous, so he grabbed Qingpin from Jiyu Zuoyuan's arms. Duyu took the opportunity to take over Qingpin's position and snuggled into Guhan's arms. She pouted and said, Big brother, I want a kiss too. You should kiss me too. I was so worried about you just now. All right, I'll kiss you too. Guhan did not refuse and directly kissed Duyu's face, which surprised Duyu. Usually, it was extremely difficult to ask for a kiss from Guhan. After all, Guhan was still a little afraid of the fact that they were siblings. So, when Guhan kissed her directly, it surprised Duyu a little. She foolishly stayed in Guhan's arms and giggled. What about me? Chijian saw that Qingpin and Duyu had successfully asked for a kiss, so it also pouted. Guhan laughed and forcefully kissed Chijian's lips. Chijian felt a little embarrassed and shyly hid to the side. Yi Tian, come here. Guhan probably felt that he could not favor one and discriminate against the other, so after kissing Chijian, Qingpin, and Duyu, he called out to Yi Tian. Are you crazy? Why do I feel like you've changed into a different person today? You've become so annoying. Who wants to be kissed by you? Yi Tian muttered. All right then, Juzi. Guhan raised his eyebrows and was about to call out to Juzi. Wait, who said I don't want it? You're my sword wielder, and I'm your sword mistress. Do you think I can refuse your orders? You big pervert, big baddie. Yi Tian closed his eyes and walked to Ji Yuhan's side, accepting his fate. Ari. Guhan kissed Yi Tian's lips deeply, causing Yi Tian to feel dizzy. It was as if the world had turned pink. Juzi, do you want it? Guhan turned to Juzi and asked. Juzi will listen to master. Juzi lowered her head and replied. No, don't listen to me today. Listen to yourself. If you want it, then raise your head. If you don't want it, then take a step back. Guhan looked at Juzi and said seriously, You're my sword lady, but you're also my master. Sometimes, you should listen to me, and sometimes, you should listen to your own ideas. Oh. Juzi replied and raised her head. Guhan smiled and gently kissed Juzi's lips. This was the first time Guhan and Juzi kissed. Just like Juzi's name, her lips actually had a faint Juzi fragrance. Me too. Me too. You can't ignore me now, I've already given my body to you. Shen Yuan excitedly skipped over and took the initiative to kiss Guhan. What else could Guhan say? Naturally, he kissed Xuanyuan's lips as well. Wait. Something's wrong just now. Qijian's expression froze. It suddenly realized that something was wrong with Xuanyuan's words. It rushed to Jiyu Xuanyuan's side and pulled Guhan's ear and asked, "Tell me clearly, what do you mean by Xuanyuan's body is also yours?" Ahem. It's a long story. Boring, pervert. Seeing Guhan shamelessly asking for kisses among the sword maidens, Zhuxian's face was filled with disdain and disgust, but there was also a touch of envy. Sister, what are you thinking? Do you want me to give you a little push? You can be as shameless as Shen Yuan. You and this man have already seen each other, so a kiss on the lips isn't a big deal. Zhuxian giggled as she tried to persuade her. Mind your own business, us sisters still have a long way to go. Zhuxian rolled her eyes at Juexian, then looked at the past water sword that was still isolated outside, and felt a little worried. Would Shishui, who had always been incompatible with the group, become a huge problem in the future? After all, as the only chance of winning against Tongtian, Jiyu Shenyuan couldn't be careless about anything. Li Bai was about to leave on a boat, when he suddenly heard footsteps singing on the shore. The peach blossom pond is 1,000 feet deep, it's not enough to express my love. In the Brastonbury stronghold, Li Bai sat on the ground leisurely drinking wine. There were dozens of empty Marotai bottles beside him. Sigh. This wine is still a little worse than by Datang's Jian Nanchun. Li Bai drank another bottle of Marotai and said with some regret. At this moment, beside Li Bai, apart from the empty bottles, there was also a body that was sleeping soundly on the ground. If it wasn't for the fact that the body's chest was still moving up and down, others would have thought that it was a dead person. Master Li Bai, we are all on the same path. We are all natural partners and friends. Why are you against us today and protecting this damned human? Around Li Bai, countless Yuan Ku surrounded him tightly. These people looked at Li Bai without any hatred in their eyes. Instead, they looked at him with deep admiration. After all, Li Bai was a holy existence in the hearts of every Chinese. However, when they looked at Jiyu Shen Yuan, their expressions were not so pleasant. They looked as if they wanted to cut Jiyu Shen Yuan into meat paste. If it wasn't for Li Bai protecting Jiyu Shen Yuan would have been cut into meat paste by these Yuan Ku. Sigh, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Bai is an upright person, upholding human justice, and walking the right path. When did Bai become partners and friends with you guys who forget the rules of the world? This is the funniest joke in the world. Li Bai said disdainfully as he drank his wine. Master Li Bai, you are wrong. This is not the real world. Besides, we are all filthy. This world can't wait to get rid of us, so we have to destroy this world. This is the natural opposition of yin and yang, just like a mouse and a cat, or an eagle and a snake. Master Li Bai, you also come from another world. We are essentially the same. One wore a silk scarf and held a feather fan. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhuge Kongming had died under the longevity sword Emperor's sword, everyone would have thought that this Yuanko was Zhuge Kongming. Fine, if we don't get along, then it's pointless to waste any more words. If you want to harm friend Bai today, then you'll have to step over Bai's corpse. Li Bai threw the wine pot in his hand and looked around with a pair of sharp eyes. All the Yuan Ku that Li Bai's gaze landed on could not help but lower their heads. No one dared to look Li Bai in the eye. This was not just because they respected Li Bai, but also because they feared him. Although there was nothing else around Li Bai other than the wine bottle and Jiyu Shen Yuan, that was because Yuan Ku's corpse would not be left behind after his death. If Yuan Ku's corpse had not been sucked away by the dimensional vortex, Li Bai would have probably been surrounded by hundreds of corpses. When Jiyu Zhaoyuan fell unconscious on top of Artoria's tombstone, The other bandits of the Martyr's Palace, who had received Jeeb's warning, swarmed over and surrounded Li Bai and Jiyu Zhaoyuan. It had been 7 to 8 hours since then. In these 8 hours, hundreds of Yuan Ku had died in Li Bai's hands. Although Li Bai was a super famous historical figure and was respected by the other Yuan Ku, this was only limited to China's Yuan Ku. However, this was only limited to the Yuan bandits of Hua Xia. Moreover, it was the Yuan bandits of Hua Xia after the Central Tang dynasty. The Yuan bandits of Hua Xia before the Central Tang dynasty and those foreign Yuan bandits of Hua Xia didn't have any respect for Li Bai. Therefore, these Yuan Ku attacked in unison, wanting to kill Li Bai on the spot. At the very least, they wanted to kill Jiyu Shen Yuan, who was lying on the ground. They had to deal with the attacks of these Yuan Ku while protecting Jiyu Shen Yuan's body from harm. This was no less difficult than playing League of Legends while doing homework. However, not only did Li Bai handle it with ease, but he also didn't let Jiyu Shen Yuan's body suffer any harm. He even killed all the Yuan Ku who dared to make a move. He used the bloody corpses to tell the other Yuan Ku that if they wanted to come over, they had to be prepared to die. Yuan Ku wasn't completely unafraid of death. After recognizing the truth, no Yuan Ku was stupid enough to court death. The scene fell into a stalemate. At this time, Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei were also among the crowd. They were Yuan Ku, who were extremely weak in combat. Even if you beat them to death, they would not have the guts to fight Li Bai. Therefore, they had been watching everything with the attitude of a bystander. However, their freedom soon came to an end. The expressions of the two people hiding in the crowd changed. They looked as if their mother had died. Qin Hui opened his mouth as if he wanted to argue, but to no avail. Instead, he looked as if he had been scolded. "There's no other way." Qin Hui turned his head and looked at Wang Jingwei with the same expression. Wang Jingwei looked back at Qin Hui with the same expression. In the end, they sighed in unison and left the crowd. 10 minutes later, they returned with a whole box of food. "Lord Li Bai." When Li Bai heard someone calling his name, he turned around and saw Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui walking over with a box of food each. It was all thanks to Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui's help that Li Bai had come to this stronghold. The two of them had called each other brothers, and Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui had never done anything wrong to Li Bai. Instead, it was Li Bai who felt that he owed them. As such, a smile appeared on Li Bai's face as he called out to Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui, "Why are you two here instead of watching the show? It's getting dark. Lord Li Bai, you haven't eaten anything for almost 10 hours. We were afraid that you would be hungry, so we brought you some food and wine. Please accept it." Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei opened the box of food and took out a variety of dishes. Needless to say, Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui had made ample preparations. Not only were there 3 vegetarian dishes and 3 meat dishes, they had also prepared 2 side dishes, a bowl of duck soup, and a large flask of aged wine. The aroma of the dishes could be smelled from afar. It was really fragrant. Good food. Good wine. Li Bai picked up a plate of braised pork and smelled it. Then, he picked up the pot of aged wine and gave it a sincere compliment. "Since it's good food and wine, Lord Li Bai, please eat quickly. Otherwise, it won't taste good when it gets cold." Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei said. "The food is good, and the wine is also good. It's just that the person who sent it is a little strange." Li Bai glanced at Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui and said, "Although Bai and the two of you called each other brothers just now, we are now in a different world. You are not the kind of people who would sacrifice yourselves for the sake of righteousness. Why did you serve Bai such delicious food?" "Well." Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei looked at each other. Although they were both big bad guys, they could not find an excuse for such a question. In the end, they could only smile bitterly and answer, "We have been bad guys all our lives, and now we want to be good guys. I just don't know if Lord Li Bai will give us such a chance. This is not a chance for nothing. You two asked for it." Li Bai flipped the dishes with his chopsticks and said with a smile, "Tell me honestly, is this food poisoned?" "No. Absolutely not." Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei hurriedly waved their hands. In order to prove their innocence, They picked up their chopsticks and put a piece of food into their mouths to prove the safety of these dishes. Haha. I've wronged that brother for nothing. I apologize to the two of you for nothing. Li Bai laughed and toasted Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei. After that, he picked up the dishes with his chopsticks and began to eat them in big bites. Chapter 1232. Li Bai ate and drank with Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui. The three of them ate and drank under the watchful eyes of the crowd. When they were almost done, Li Bai blushed and said with a strange smile, "Did Jibi give you the antidote in advance?" Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui looked at Li Bai and said, "Did he give you the antidote in advance?" Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei's expressions changed. They smiled flatteringly and said, "Master Li Bai, what are you talking about? No matter how shameless we are, we would never do such a thing. To be honest, it's hard to be a bad person. It's even harder to be a bad person, and it's even harder to be a bad person. It's even more impossible for a bad person to become a good person." Li Bai continued to eat and drink. "Some things have been engraved in your bones. If you can't change them, you'll end up like An Lushan and Shasiming. Both of you are hopeless bastard." Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei were stunned for a while. Then, Qin Hui said quietly, "Since Master Li Bai has seen through us, why do you still want to eat our food and drink? What about Jibi? Why not?" Li Bai shrugged. "There's no poison in the food and drink." "But Jibi." Wang Jingwei's eyes widened as if he could not understand the meaning of Li Bai's words. "Jibi is a liar. He lied to you too," Li Bai said, shaking his head and sounding a little pitiful. "Jibi lied to us. Jibi, he." Before Wang Jingwei and Qin Hui could finish their words, they could not say another word. In an instant, their bodies turned into a cloud of blood mist. Shrouded by the blood mist, a golden light shot directly at Li Bai's heart. "You're so boring. You're using your own people's lives as a smokescreen to cover up your own intentions. Jibi, you're a scumbag even worse than these two bastards." Li Bai's body glowed with a crimson light. When everything calmed down, a golden arrow fell beside Li Bai. The arrow looked very familiar. Wasn't it Jibi's golden arrow? "Humph. I didn't expect you to find out." Jibi, who was a U-level master, walked up to Li Bai and glanced disdainfully at Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei's bodies that were about to be taken away by the dimensional vortex. "These two are useless. It's not a big deal to kill them." It turned out that this was Jibi's plan. First, he lied to Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei by telling them that the food was poisoned. Then, he gave Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei the antidote so that they could trick Bai into drinking the poisoned food. Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei did not know what was going on. Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei and Bai thought. Qin and Jingwei thought. However, Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei didn't know that this was just a smokescreen to deceive them. They might be able to fool Yuan bandits of other levels, but they would never be able to fool Yuan bandits who were above the universe realm. Therefore, there was no poison in the food at all. This was to make Li Bai lower his guard. However, Jibi hid in a hidden place and used Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei's bodies as cover. Then, he shot a fatal arrow at Li Bai. Because they were kept in the dark from beginning to end, Li Bai and Wang Jingwei never thought that the fatal arrow that was aimed at Li Bai would come from behind them. Li Bai would also lower his guard because Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei were in front of him. He never expected that someone would sacrifice Qin Hui and Wang Jingwei's lives to assassinate him. "People say that you are smart, but I don't believe them." "Jibi, you are indeed smart." Jibi exclaimed in admiration when he saw that his plan, which he thought was foolproof, had failed. "Don't. I'm a fool. People who know me know that if I were smart, I wouldn't have ended up like that. I'm a complete fool," Li Bai said in a self-deprecating manner. "Oh, so you didn't find out?" Jibi frowned. He had a bad feeling. "Yes, I'm not that smart." Li Bai nodded heavily. Then, he patted Jiyu Xuanyuan's body beside him and said with a smile, "Miss Xuanyuan, it's getting late. We should go back now. When are you going to stop acting?" "I'm just lying on the ground for a while because I'm happy with your performance." Jiyu Xuanyuan smiled and got up from the ground. Looking at the densely packed yuan ku surrounding her, She said with a smile, "Brother Li Bai, thank you for guarding me for so long. I, Guhan, will never forget your kindness." Wait. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Miss Shen Yuan, how did you become a man? Who is Guhan? Li Bai rubbed his eyes. He never expected that Jiyu Shenyuan, who had been a woman just a moment ago, would become a man in the blink of an eye. She even called herself Guhan. I'll explain it to you later. Just pretend that I'm Guhan all the time. Just don't tell anyone. Guhan said to Li Bai secretly through voice transmission. It's okay if you don't tell anyone, but everyone around here knows that you were originally a woman. Think about it yourself. Li Bai shrugged his shoulders. Strange, how did this person become a man? Yes. It was clearly a woman just now. As expected, seeing Guhan appear, the surrounding Yuan Ku immediately began to talk about it. Who are you? Where is that woman? Hand her over. Zhebi drew his bow and arrow and pointed at Guhan's nose. Hehe, even if you don't ask me, I still have to say it. You guys are all very brave. You actually dared to bully my sister. If it wasn't for my quick reflexes and my good friend Li Bai's help, my sister would have died in your hands. We will settle this debt. Ji Yuhan narrowed his eyes and said. Nonsense. That's impossible. I've been watching this place. How could you possibly save your sister? That's impossible. Zhebi said loudly. Hee. If you have the ability, then go and find my sister. You can't even understand how I saved my sister. What face do you have to point an arrow at my head? Ji Yuhan's words were filled with venom. After Guhan completed the synchronization with the celestial extinguishing sword, Guhan had used up all the power of the 6 revolutions celestial pills in his body. That was why he had changed back to his original appearance from Jiyu Shenyuan to Guhan. Of course, it was impossible for Zhebi to see when Guhan saved Jiyu Shenyuan. However, Zhebi did not know this. Moreover, Guhan had directly said that he was the one who saved Jiyu Shenyuan, which completely fooled Zhebi. Zhebi was thinking about how Guhan saved Jiyu Shenyuan. It had never crossed his mind that Jiyu Shenyuan had become Guhan. As for the other Yuan Ku who was present, they did not know what had happened before. They had not even seen Jiyu Shenyuan before. When Zhebi accepted the fact that Jiyu Shenyuan had been rescued, the other Yuanko members also accepted the fact that Jiyu Shenyuan was rescued. Then I'll kill you and interrogate your soul. The golden arrow in Zhebi's hand flew out and went straight for Ji Yuhan's head. Unexpectedly, Ji Yuhan didn't even try to dodge. Instead, he used the paw sword in his hand to deflect the golden arrow. You can't even defeat my sister, and you still want to fight me? Guhan sneered. He shot out like an arrow that was released from a bow. His speed was even faster than the golden arrow shot by Zhebi. What? Zhebi's eyes widened. He did not expect Guhan to be so fast that he did not even have time to escape through the void gate. Legend of Chaos. Guhan did not hesitate. He directly used his most powerful killer move. The Legend of Chaos hit Zhebi, who could not dodge in time. The Legend of Chaos was the 5th move in the Chaos Sword art created by Guhan. It was the first move among all of Guhan's swordsmanship that was completely performed with the power of the rule. It could transform one's entire body into the rule for a short period of time. The power of the rule was the power that could cross reality and the void gate. Once an attack was performed with the power of the rule, the damage caused would be able to penetrate any defense and cause devastating damage in an indescribable way. There was already a universe-level, Yuan Ku Artmand, who was killed by Guhan's rule power. Now, there was another universe-level named Zhebi. As Guhan's Legend of Chaos hit Zhebi's body, Zhebi did not even have the time to scream or make a frightened expression. He did not even have the time to think. His body cracked like broken glass and turned into a pile of debris. Finally, a dimensional vortex appeared and sucked in the unlucky universe-level Yuan Ku. Oh my god. He actually, instantly killed. Shin Chiji looked at the scene in front of him dumbfoundedly. He never thought that the powerful universe-class Ku Zhebi would die in the hands of a human like this. He didn't even have a chance to resist, not even a second, and he didn't even have the chance to escape into the void. He was completely killed by this human in seconds. Shin Chiji was not the only one who fell into a daze. All the other Yuan Ku Zhibi were also stunned. At this moment, they suddenly realized that the position of the prey and the hunter had changed. It was not the thousands of Yuan Ku Zhibi surrounding their opponent, but the two of them surrounding them. Amazing. Li Bai's pupils shrunk to the size of a green bean. He held the hilt of his sword tightly and began to think about what would happen if he was Guhan's opponent. Finally, Li Bai came to a sad conclusion. If he fought with Guhan, he would only be able to withstand 3 strikes at most, similar to the strike that killed Zhibi in an instant. Once Guhan had the power to use the 4th strike, he would lose for sure. Then, the question was, did Guhan have the ability to use the 4th strike of the Legend of Chaos in a short time? I killed him in an instant, but the consumption of sword essence is too terrifying. Guhan felt the sword essence in his body. The sword essence that was originally as abundant as an ocean was now like a shallow lake. Almost 1 million sword essence was used up in an instant. This was the price to kill a universe-level Yuan Ku Zhi in an instant. Some readers might find it strange. Didn't Guhan only have 450,000 quarks of sword essence? How could Guhan have 1 million quarks of sword essence for him to use? An hour ago, or rather, 5 minutes ago, Guhan indeed only had 450,000 quarks of sword essence in his body. However, at this time, Guhan hadn't completely synchronized with the Immortal Slaying Sword and Immortal Extinguish Sword, so the new sword essence brought by the initial carving of the sword mark hadn't been taken into account yet. Generally speaking, the initial carving of a famed sword maiden's sword mark could bring the sword wielder 10,000 quarks of new sword essence, and a spirit sword maiden could bring 100,000 quarks of new sword essence. This was the initial carving of most spirit sword maidens' sword marks. However, what Guhan didn't expect was that the Immortal Slaying Sword and Immortal Extinguish Sword, these 2 spirit sword maidens, would each bring 300,000 quarks of new sword essence to Guhan. The 2 of them added up to a total of 600,000 quarks of sword marks. This scared Guhan so much that he couldn't believe it when he woke up. You country bumpkin, 300,000 quarks of sword essence is enough to shock you. You have to know that this is the sword essence after both of us were seriously injured. If both of us were at our peak, we could have added tens of millions of. Before Immortal Extinguish Sword could finish its sentence, it was stopped by Immortal Culling Sword. However, this also made Guhan feel very strange. Even an Emperor Sword Maiden could only increase sword essence by 10 million quarks at the initial carving of the sword mark. Wasn't Immortal Extinguish Sword bragging a little too much when it said that it could increase sword essence by tens of millions? Alright, no matter what, Guhan now had 1,050,000 quarks of sword essence. In other words, when Guhan became a true spirit sword maiden, Guhan already had the potential to transform into an immortal sword maiden. As long as Guhan could find his own immortal sword maiden, then Guhan could become an immortal sword maiden. TSK, a 22-year-old immortal sword maiden. This age had already surpassed the records of all sword holders. Including Kunzu, no one could be compared to Guhan. Based on this alone, Guhan could go down in history and become a name that every youth had to remember when they studied in the future. But using 1 million quarks of sword essence just now was still a bit too wasteful. It felt like I only needed to use about 700,000 quarks to kill Zhibi. There was no need to waste the remaining 300,000 quarks. Guhan secretly reflected in his heart, reflected on his wasteful behavior. Hurry up and run for your life. Seeing that Guhan was in a daze in the sky, the surrounding Yuan Ku suddenly woke up from the shock. One Yuan Ku shouted, and the other Yuan Ku instantly came to a realization. Then, they frantically fled in all directions and began their own escape journey. Want to escape? Have you asked for my permission? The Celestial Slayer sword in Guhan's hand began to emit sword chi. As long as Guhan willed it, the sword chi would shoot out in all directions. It might be hard to say if the Yuan Ku above nether level would die, but the Yuan Ku below nether level would definitely die. Brother Jiyu Han, wait a moment. Please let them off. Li Bai suddenly spoke up to stop Jiyu Han when he saw this scene. Why? Guhan turned his head to look at Li Bai and asked with narrowed eyes. This was also because Li Bai had guarded Guhan's body for 7 or 8 hours, ensuring that he would not die in the hands of Yuan Ku when he fell into the illusion. That was why Guhan would stop. Otherwise, based on Guhan's deep hatred for Yuan Ku, no one would be able to stop Guhan no matter who spoke up. The non-Chinese Yuan Ku were all killed by a long time ago. The remaining Yuan Ku didn't attack Bai from beginning to end. At the same time, they are also people who admire Bai. According to the modern words, they are Bai's fans. Li Bai smiled bitterly. Bai can't just watch Bai's fans die in the hands of Bai's friend. Bai doesn't care if you kill them at other times, but at least now, you can't kill them in front of Bai. Okay. Guhan nodded. Since Li Bai had spoken up, he had to give him face. Moreover, Yuan Ku who were below universe level were no longer in Guhan's eyes. Killing them now or in the future was the same. Thank you. Li Bai smiled and patted Guhan's shoulder. Okay, now can you tell me where Bai's dear Miss Jiu Shenyuan went? Chapter 1233. Longsha, what the hell do you want to do? The 3 Hong levels Yuan Ku didn't know how many times they had asked Longsha Jendi this question, but Longsha Jendi had only given one answer from beginning to end, which was to invite the 3 of them to spend more time inside the dimensional barrier, and to invite them to eat a few more meals. The 3 Hong levels Yuan Ku naturally refused. They first chose to collectively attack a position in the dimensional barrier, trying to break the defensive cover of the dimensional barrier. But every time this happened, Longsha Jendi would rush into the dimensional barrier, hindering the 3 of them from breaking through. Disturbed by Longsha Jendi, the 3 of them naturally did not dare to break through with all their strength, and could only turn around and besiege Longsha Jendi. But every time this happened, Longsha Jendi would cunningly break through the void and escape from the dimensional barrier, not giving the 3 of them the opportunity to besiege him. The 3 Yuan Ku's faces turned as red as Guan Yu's after being tossed and turned by Longsha Jendi. They wished they could risk their lives to kill this cunning Longsha Jendi. While they were angry, the 3 Yuan Ku's were also puzzled. Although Longsha Jendi kept harassing them to break through the dimensional barrier, it was only a small dimensional barrier system after all. Under their desperate attacks, the energy value of the dimensional barrier had been reduced by about 90%. As long as they put in a little more effort, it would not take more than an hour and a half at most for this small dimensional barrier system to be broken by them. At that time, birds could fly freely in the sky, and fish could jump freely in the sea. The 3 flood-level Yuan Ku's had made dozens of great aspirations in their hearts, swearing that as long as they rushed out, they would lead their Yuan Ku's to launch endless attacks on the swordbearers outside London. Even if they had to sacrifice their identity as flood-level Yuan Ku, even if Yuan Ku had to deal with some famed sword rank, or even ancient sword rank swordbearers, they would not hesitate. In short, once these 3 flood-level Yuan Ku's were freed, unless they did not leave the protection of the dimensional barrier, they would die. After all, these flood-level Yuan Ku's were already angry. It was precisely because of this that the 3 flood-level Yuan Ku's could not understand why Longsha Jendi did this. Longsha Jendi should know very well what the result of provoking their anger would be. Longsha Jendi should also know that it was impossible for him to kill 3 flood-level Yuan Ku's by himself, and that the small dimensional barrier would eventually be destroyed. Longsha Jendi himself should be very clear about how bad this move was, so why did he still make this move? This was something that the 3 flood-level Yuan Ku's could not understand no matter how hard they tried. Lord General! Lord General! Suddenly, a group of cavalrymen galloped from a distance. Behind this group of cavalrymen was a large military flag with the word Guan written on it. Obviously, this was Guan Yu's army. Stop them! The surrounding swordbearers rushed over to intercept this group of cavalrymen Yuan Ku, but they did not expect that Longsha Jendi would give the order to rest assured. These swordbearers could only resentfully retreat, letting this group of cavalrymen come to the front of the dimensional barrier. Zhongbao, why are you here? What happened? Guan Yu asked loudly through the dimensional barrier. Lord Uncle, it's not good. Some emptiness people have joined forces with the freelancers to break into our stronghold. Hundreds of dragon level and above brothers have already died in their hands. They also took away the innate sword lady of our monastery. We couldn't get in touch with Lord Uncle no matter what, so I had to personally lead a group of cavalrymen to rush over. Lord Uncle, what happened to you? Zhong Bao said anxiously. Hey, don't you have eyes? We have been tricked by these emptiness people and trapped by their dimensional barrier. Guan Yu's face, which was like a monkey's buttocks, turned even redder. He turned to Longsha Jendi and angrily asked, "This is your trick, isn't it? You deliberately used that woman to lure us here, and then sent people to sneak into our stronghold and steal our innate sword ladies. You shameless scum. I actually thought you were an opponent, but I was wrong about you. You are a shameless scum. Don't make it sound so ugly. What do you mean I'm a shameless scum? Dare I ask General Guan Yu, are those innate sword ladies your innate sword ladies? She's also the sword lady that your people stole from our Yangjing city. These innate sword ladies originally belonged to us humans, and now we are just returning them to their rightful owners. Don't talk nonsense with him. Since he has done this, he will not listen to you. Zhong Bao, let me ask you, how are those two people now? Did they escape? Temujin said to Guan Yu, then turned to Zhong Bao and asked. Your Majesty Temujin, the human is in a coma, and we don't know whether he is dead or alive. As for the free man, he is still trapped by us. Zhong Bao replied. Who is that human? Who is the free man? I'd like to see who in the world has the guts to steal the things of our martyr's palace. Temujin asked. On the other side, Longsha Jendi also pricked up his ears. This was the reason why he released Zhong Bao, because Longsha Jendi also wanted to know the current situation of Jiyu Shahan and Li Bai. That human is a woman. There is no information about this woman in the database for the time being, but I saw her yesterday when I was watching the battle with my uncle. She is undoubtedly the woman who fought with the pirate sword immortal yesterday. I saw it with my own eyes. Zhong Bao replied. What? It's that woman. Temujin looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He turned his head fiercely to look at Longsha Jendi and said, Longsha Jendi, you are really good at scheming. You are really good at putting on a good show. First, you let that woman fight with your own people, and finally, you used the gimmick of an emperor sword against a spiritual sword to attract the attention of us and the dragon kings of the four seas. I never thought that this last battle was actually a big scam, just to lure us here so that woman could sneak in. Amazing. Really amazing. This Khan has dominated the world for decades, but this is the first time I have been schemed like this. Thank you for letting me win. Same to you. Longsha Jendi was quite straightforward and directly admitted his scheme. And that free man? Who is that free man? Could it be that the people of the Freedom Metropolis have already decided to violate the agreement they made with us and intervene in this war? Guan Yu asked a key question. That is also a new free man. I think his name is Li Bai, and he seems to be very famous in later generations. Those brothers after the Tang dynasty all know him. His kung fu is also extremely powerful, especially his swordsmanship, which is simply amazing. None of our hundreds of brothers could withstand a single move from him. General Jabi said that this Li Bai is at least a universe-level expert, or even an eternity-level expert. Li Bai. This Khan has heard Eternal Spring Zhenren say that this is a poet of the Tang dynasty who wrote a cliché. It's really boring. I can't believe that such a sour guy actually has such strength. Temujin exclaimed, then his face changed and he shouted, not good. I'm afraid that no one in the stronghold is a match for this person except for Jabi. The stronghold is in danger. If we don't rush out quickly, I'm afraid that all our men will die. In that case, let's use our trump card. Guan Yu glanced at his two companions beside him, and Temujin and Tesla nodded at the same time. Although they had been attacking the dimensional barrier for the past few hours, they had only used conventional means and held all their trump cards in their hands. The reason why they had been holding back was that such a trump card would consume their source power, which required a lot of time to recover. But now that the stronghold was in such a crisis, they could not delay any longer. They could only pinch their noses and accept it, and they had to get out of here first. The three old guys are going all out. Seeing this scene, Longsha Jendi secretly shook his head. Longsha Jendi knew that even if he could withstand the 3 flood-level Yuan Ku's trump cards, he would probably lose half of his life and consume a lot of sword essence. He had trapped the 3 flood-level Yuan Kus for long enough, and he had fulfilled his promise to Jiyu Shahan. As for whether Jiyu Shahan was dead or alive, Long Shijendi was sorry. Long Shijendi would never put himself in danger. Seeing that Long Shijendi had chosen to stand by and do nothing, the 3 flood-level Yuan Kus were not surprised at all. If they were in Long Shijendi's shoes, they would have done the same. It was just that once they consumed their source power, they would not be able to retaliate against the human swordbearers in the future. Otherwise, if they were caught by Long Shijendi and consumed their source power, they would probably die on the spot. Sigh, it seems that the Martyr's Palace is going to suffer a big loss this time, but the City of London shouldn't get any benefits either. There will be a reign of terror on the sea in the future. After knowing that Long Shijendi's target was not them at all, the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas sat calmly on the sidelines, watching the 3 flood-level Yuan Kus Long Shijendi's play as if they were watching a play. But now, the good show was coming to an end. The 3 Yuan Kus were ready to go all out, while Long Shijendi had chosen to give up. Sigh. It would have been good if they had played for a while. Such fun could not be seen even once in hundreds of years. This guy. Long Shijendi, who was watching coldly from the sidelines, suddenly received a communication notification in his mind. He took a look and found that it was actually a communication from Jiyu Shahan. The communication said, "The matter is over. Sword Maiden is in my hands and is on her way back. If Guan Yu and the other 2 try to break out of the encirclement, Your Majesty Longsha, please be sure to intercept them and wait for my return." What does this Jiyu Shahan mean? She actually wants me to stop these 3 guys. Long Shijendi glanced at the 3 flood-level Yuan Kus, who were already halfway through preparing their big moves, and began to secretly estimate the price he would have to pay to intercept them. This price would take at least half a year to recover. Should I stop them or not? Long Shijendi's dilemma did not last long before he decisively decided not to stop them. Even if he stopped them, what could he do? Would he be able to kill these 3 run-level Yuan bandits? Your Majesty, if this junior can wait for my return, I will certainly be able to kill 1 or 2 of them and achieve Your Majesty's unparalleled merit. Jiyu Shahan seemed to have understood Long Shijendi's thoughts, and then sent another communication. This time, Long Shijendi was really moved. If he could really kill one of these 3 flood-level Yuan Kus, then he would certainly be famous all over the world, and at the same time, he would also be able to resolve a knot in his heart. The biggest knot in Long Shijendi's life was that although he was an Emperor Sword-level swordsman, he did not even have the achievements that an Emperor Sword-level swordsman should have. Other Emperor Sword-level swordsmen had at least killed 1 flood-level Yuan Kus, and some powerful Jendi had even killed more than a dozen flood-level Yuan Kus. As for the 2 Jendis, Kunzu and Zhetian, they regarded the flood-level Yuan Ku as nothing. More than 30 people had died under their swords, which made them famous. However, since Long Shijendi had become an Emperor Sword-level swordsman, he did not even have a single flood-level Yuan Ku's achievement. Although Long Shijendi was still young and had at least 20 or 30 years of Emperor's fate, as time went by, this had become a nail buried in Long Shijendi's heart, making Long Shijendi suffer every moment. Therefore, when Jiyu Shahan proposed a set of plans to recapture the lost sword lady in Yangjing City, Long Shijendi very readily agreed to cooperate with Jiyu Shahan in this play, in order to obtain the great merit of recapturing the sword lady, and thus cover up the fact that he had not killed the flood-level Yuan Kus. Now, a great opportunity was placed in front of Long Shijendi. It would be completely false to say that Long Shijendi was not tempted. But the problem was that even if Long Shijendi risked his serious injury to stall these Yuan Kus, even if Jiyu Shahan came back, could she, a spirit sword-level swordsman, really help to kill a flood-level Yuan Ku? Although Jiyu Shahan, a spirit sword-level swordsman, was powerful enough to rival the pirate Jendi, it was impossible for her to kill one of the 3 flood-level Yuan Kus. If the pirate sword immortal makes a move, Long Shijendi's mind turned. If the pirate sword immortal made a move, the result would be different. As long as the pirate sword Celestial and Jiyu Shahan could each hold off a river-level Yuenko, he could focus on dealing with the other river-level Yuenko. Then, he would have a chance to kill them. After all, The three Yuenko had already used their ultimate moves, and the biggest threat was gone. But my loss is too. Longsha Jendi began to worry about his loss again. Would the cost of recuperating for half a year be too huge? If there was a little trouble elsewhere, then wouldn't he? Your Majesty, this junior has 500 drops of Emperor blood in my hands, which I am willing to offer to your Majesty to help your Majesty recover. Jiyu Shahan's third communication could be said to be a trump card, which completely conquered Longsha Jendi's indecisive mind. Emperor blood was not as magical as it used to be for immortal sword-level swordsmen, and its effect on Emperor sword-level swordsmen was dozens of times smaller. After all, Emperor blood was the essence and blood separated from the body of an Emperor sword-level swordsman. How could one drop of Emperor blood resurrect an Emperor sword-level swordsman in full condition? But everything was afraid of a large quantity, and once the quantity was large, the benefits would be large. A drop of Emperor blood was naturally a drop of water on a burning cart of firewood for Jendi, but if 500 drops of Emperor blood were taken together, it might not be possible to resurrect in full condition, but it would still be normal to shorten the recovery time by half a year. In this way, in less than a month, Longsha Jendi would be able to recover to his strongest state. As for whether Jiyu Shahan had so much Emperor blood in her hands, Longsha Jendi did not doubt it at all, because when he went to chat with Fleeting Wooden Fish not long ago, Fleeting Wooden Fish had personally told Longsha Jendi that Guhan had taken tens of thousands of cc of Emperor blood from them, which made Longsha Jendi extremely envious. Do it. Looking at the 3 flood-level Yuan Kus that had been brewing their unique skills to the extreme not far away, Longsha Jendi finally made up his mind, and the blade was already unsheathed. Chapter 1234. Eternal Heaven, Descend. Temujin waved the saber in his hand, and the whole world changed color. The sky seemed to fall from the sky, and a dark mass fell on the world, as if it was going to crush the whole earth. This was Temujin's ultimate move. Myth, thunder, and lightning descend. As the sky pressed down, countless lightning snakes wantonly surged in the sky. Each lightning snake had at least 100 million volts of voltage. Once any of the lightning snakes touched them, no swordbearer below the spirit sword level could survive. This was Tesla's trump card. Green Dragon Crescent Moon Slash. A green dragon began to circle around Guan Yu's Green Dragon Crescent Moonblade. This green dragon's power was so great that it looked like a real dragon. No, even a normal real dragon couldn't compare to the real dragon circling around the Green Dragon Crescent Moonblade. Only a real dragon at the level of the Dragon King of the Four Seas could have such power. I say, Old Bay, why does this dragon look exactly like you? When the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas saw Guan Yu's real dragon, they couldn't help but complain to their brother, the Dragon King of the North Sea. As the 4 real dragons who were as close as brothers, they felt that the real dragon circling around the Green Dragon Crescent Moonblade looked exactly like the Dragon King of the North Sea. Cough, cough. The Dragon King of the North Sea coughed and said with a bitter face, when the fate of the Han dynasty was at its end, the Jade Emperor decided to help the heroes of the world to bring chaos to the Han dynasty. He asked me to donate a few hundred drops of blood. They didn't tell me what the blood was going to do at that time. Now it seems that it was used to forge this Green Dragon Crescent Moonblade. Bah! The people of the Heavenly Court are the most shameless. On one hand, they want to bring chaos to the dynasty in the human world, and on the other hand, they want us to bleed. They are so shameless. In fact, humans don't have so many things to do. It's just that the people of the Heavenly Court always feel that the fate of the dynasty in the human world is at its end, so they want to change the dynasty and make a bet on who the final winner will be. In a few words, the Dragon King of the East Sea revealed a big secret in the human world. People often say, when it comes to the great affairs of the world, what is united for a long time must be separated, and what is divided for a long time must be united. In fact, there was no such thing as separation and union. Ever since the Shang and Zhou dynasties, the Chan sect and the Jie sect used the destiny of the Shang and Zhou dynasties to have a great war. The people of the Heavenly Court began to like using the destiny of the dynasties in the human world to do things. The reason for Chan school and Jie school was for the prosperity of their respective sects. It was also a fair and reasonable reason. However, There was no such normal reason for the decline of the dynasties in the later generations. It was all because the big shots of the heavenly court were itching to gamble, but the standard of gambling was too low, and it was too boring. Therefore, these big shots of the heavenly court simply used the rise and fall of the dynasties in the mortal world as a plot. They would use a few forces as chess pieces and then have the big shots of the heavenly court place their bets. In the end, they would see whose chess piece would be able to conquer the world. In order to win the bet, these big shots would also shamelessly send their subordinates down to the mortal world to help the chess piece they had chosen. It was fine if the big shots followed the rules and were willing to admit defeat. After all, after a few decades of war, a new dynasty would appear, such as the Qin and Han dynasties, or the Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties. However, if the big shots did not follow the rules and willfully cheated, then things would be very troublesome. The human world would suffer the most painful and endless war. For example, during the Five Barbarians Rebellion and the Five Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period, it was because these big shots had placed too much of their bets. They would rather the entire human world turn into a pile of scorched earth in order to obtain the final victory. Thus, there were the two most painful periods in the history of Huaxia's dynasties. Later on, the Jade Emperor felt that this was not very good and that it would hurt the prestige of the heavenly court. Thus, he set up strict rules to prevent cheating. This was why the succession of dynasties was very smooth after the Song dynasty, and there were no centuries of chaos. Guan Yu's green dragon crescent blade was the masterpiece of a big shot of the heavenly court. This big shot naturally placed his bets on Liu Bei. In order to strengthen Liu Bei, he asked the North Sea Dragon King for a few hundred drops of blood essence to forge the green dragon crescent blade. Then, he passed it to Guan Yu through the hands of a merchant. However, this big shot did not expect that Guan Yu was too famous in the mortal world. In the end, he even became a saint with his physical body. In terms of martial strength and status, he was even above the big shot of the heavenly court. The green dragon crescent blade also evolved along with Guan Yu, reaching the point where it could evolve into a real dragon. These three guys have indeed brought out all their trump cards. This dimensional barrier only has 20% of its energy left. It definitely won't be able to withstand their ultimate moves. The four of us can leave after watching this final show, the East Sea Dragon King said calmly. The Dragon King of the East Sea said faintly. The other Dragon Kings also nodded. Just as they were about to pack up and leave, something unexpected happened. Just as the three Yuan Ku's ultimate moves were about to pull the trigger, a door suddenly appeared between the three of them. A middle-aged woman, who was basically naked with only a few leaves covering her vital parts, jumped out of the door and attacked Temujin's throat. "Longsha, you're crazy," Temujin shouted. His face had already turned purple. At this time, he was using his ultimate move with all his strength and had no spare energy to care about the sword aimed at his throat. Unless Temujin used his birth of longevity to stop this sword mistress, he would have no choice but to let her cut his throat. But if Temujin were to use his ultimate move to break through the dimensional barrier to attack the sword mistress, with the three of them being so close together, his ultimate move would definitely affect the other two. At that time, no one would be able to use their ultimate move. "Temujin, don't worry about her, attack the dimensional barrier with all your strength," Tesla shouted immediately, afraid that Temujin would be affected. But what Tesla didn't expect was that his words would have the opposite effect. If the one being attacked was Guan Yu, then with the temperament of a general, he would achieve his original goal even if his throat was cut. But the problem was that the one being attacked was Temujin. Temujin was a king, and his vision was naturally much higher than Guan Yu's. It was reasonable to say that he should know what was important and what was not. But it was precisely because Temujin was a king, and a king was often the most selfish one, he would not risk his own injury for the benefit of the other two. Therefore, Temujin made a very incorrect decision in the blink of an eye. At the last moment, Temujin changed the target of his ultimate move to the sword mistress who was attacking him. Birth of longevity was indeed the ultimate move of Genghis Khan, the king of a generation. Its power was amazing, and the whole dark sky covered the sword mistress' body. The sword mistress lost about 30% of her protective barrier on the spot, and her whole face became as pale as paper. Temujin and Longsha, you two bastards. But Guan Yu and Tesla were also covered by Temujin's attack, and their bodies also spat out several mouthfuls of blood from Temujin's ultimate move. The anger in their hearts instantly rose to the maximum. Longsha, since you won't let the three of us go, the three of us won't go either. We'll play with you to the end. Seeing that Temujin's ultimate move was interrupted, Guan Yu knew that it was impossible for him and Tesla to break the dimensional barrier with only their ultimate moves. Coupled with his anger towards Longsha Gendi's shameless behavior, Guan Yu was so angry that he simply stopped trying to break the dimensional barrier and directly threw his ultimate move on the sword mistress of Longsha Gendi. The sword mistress, who only had a few leaves to cover her body, could be described as miserable. She had just endured Temujin's ultimate move, and now she had to endure Guan Yu's ultimate move. In terms of single-target attack power, Guan Yu's ultimate move was more than several times stronger than Temujin's. You guys. Looking at the situation, even Tesla, who was the calmest among them, felt helpless. What else could he do? Like Guan Yu, he could only use his ultimate move on the Sword Maiden. The Sword Mistress could be described as miserable to the extreme. With her own strength, she forcibly took on 3 Hong-level Yuan Ku's ultimate moves. Her protective barrier collapsed on the spot, and her body was full of cracks, faintly showing signs of breaking. Gaia, come back. Of course, Longsha Gendi could not just watch as his sword mistress was broken by the 3 Yuan Kus, so at the critical moment, he appeared beside the sword mistress and let his sword mistress return to the sheath. You've worked hard. Longsha Gendi patted the hilt of the Gaia sword and said. This Gaia sword was Longsha Gendi's Emperor Sword level sword mistress, and only an Emperor Sword level sword mistress could withstand the attacks of 3 Hong level Yuan Kus. Longsha, go to hell. This time, I will never let you off. Seeing Longsha Gendi appear in front of him, Tai Muzhen, who was the first to be attacked, could no longer suppress the anger in his heart and slashed at Longsha Gendi's neck with the horseman in his hand. Barbarian. Won't amount to anything. Longsha Gendi snorted coldly, avoided Tai Muzhen's attack through the void gate, and then once again escaped from the dimensional wall, coldly looking at the 3 people who were still trapped in the dimensional wall in the distance. TSK, I didn't expect that Longsha would actually stop these 3 people at the last moment. I really don't understand why Longsha would do this. Seeing this scene, the surrounding dragon kings of the 4 seas said in confusion. Yes. It's completely unreasonable. Even if Longsha succeeded in stopping these 3 guys this time, he himself will not feel good. Even the personal shield of his own sword mistress was broken. This is not a simple injury. I estimate that this time, Longsha's Zifu must have suffered a lot of damage, and he won't be able to recover to his peak state within half a year. The Dragon King of the East Sea was worthy of being an old guy who had lived for more than 100,000 years. At a glance, he could see through the state of Longsha Gendi. You guys, we didn't lose this time. Longsha didn't eat the winning move. On the contrary, he won't be able to recover within half a year. Hihi, in this half a year, I will make the whole city of London run with blood. Tai Muzhen said with a sneer. We have already used our trump card. I'm afraid we won't be able to break the dimensional wall in a short time. Tesla said with some worry. Don't be afraid. Even if all the people in the stronghold are dead, it's enough as long as the 3 of us are still alive. We will make London pay the price. Tai Muzhen said coldly. Hey. There's no other way, this is the only way. Although they still had the strength to use their ultimate move for the second time, if they used their ultimate move for the second time, then it wouldn't be as simple as using their origin, it would be directly using their lifespan to fight. These Yuenko weren't that stupid. They decided to still use ordinary attacks to deal with the dimensional wall. Anyway, at this time, the personal shield of Longsha Gendi's Emperor Sword of Gaia had been broken. Even if Longsha Gendi had 100 guts, he would not dare to stop the 3 flood-level Yuan Ku. Without Longsha Gendi's obstruction, the energy of the dimensional wall began to decline at a much faster rate than before. In less than 20 minutes, the dimensional wall would be broken. Where are you now? My Zifu is seriously injured, but the dimensional wall can still support for 10 minutes. If you don't come over in 10 minutes, I won't be able to stop you. Although there were still 20 minutes left, Longsha Jendi directly changed it to 10 minutes. This was also a kind of social art. My Majesty, there are still 20 minutes left. Don't you think it's too much to lie to me like this? Gu Shahan's communication device quickly replied. You're already here? Seeing that Gu Shahan knew the exact time within a few seconds, Longsha Jendi frowned and asked. Your Majesty, this little girl has already traveled all over the world. Now, I'm already 108,000 miles away from London. Gu Shahan's reply made Longsha Jendi want to hit someone. After calming down for a while, Longsha Jendi suppressed his anger and replied, You have to know that you have to pay the price for doing and speaking. Your Majesty, don't be angry. Although this little girl has left, this little girl's younger brother has already arrived. This little girl's younger brother is 10 times more capable than this little girl. Your Majesty can rest assured. After Longsha Jendi finished reading the communication device, he instinctively looked down and saw a handsome teenager standing not far away, waving his hand coldly as a greeting. Guhan. Longsha Jendi, of course, would not fail to recognize Guhan. After all, this was the guy he had schemed against for a long time. Guhan pays respect to your Majesty. Guhan walked slowly to Longsha Jendi's side and bowed to Longsha Jendi. His actions and procedures were so standard that there was nothing to say. You dare to appear in front of me? Longsha Jendi was not in a good mood and said with a cold face, Have you forgotten that you are still a wanted criminal of the Sword Commission? I am indebted to your Majesty. How could this junior dare to forget? Although Guhan's words were respectful, his tone was full of sarcasm. If your Majesty is willing, then you can have this junior locked up in the commission for discipline inspection. This junior will definitely be arrested without putting up a fight, and will not dare to resist. Humph. If you really have 10 times the ability of your sister, in the whole of London, except for me, who can deal with you? Longsha Jendi was also straightforward and directly said that no one in the whole of London could catch Guhan. Your Majesty, this junior is not here to quarrel with your Majesty. This junior is sincerely here to help your Majesty. Guhan put away his sarcasm and said in the most respectful tone. Is that so? Longsha Jendi's face looked much better. He nodded slightly and said, Well, I have contacted the pirate sword immortal. As long as you and he can each hold off a flood-level Yuan coup, I can kill the remaining one. Can you do this? It's just a flood-level Yuan coup. This junior can still do it. Guhan said lightly. That's good. Longsha Jendi did not show anything on his face, but he was extremely uncomfortable in his heart. This Guhan actually said that flood-level Yuan Ku's tone was even more relaxed than his. Did this guy think that his ability was already comparable to an Emperor sword-level sword wielder? Although this was a joke that 10,000 people would think was a joke if they heard it. But for some reason, Longsha Jendi had a feeling that he was very likely to be the joke. Chapter 1235. This guy is already seriously injured, yet he still dares to come back. Seeing Longsha Jendi reappear in front of them, the 3 Yuan Kus were very surprised. Just now, Longsha Jendi's Emperor Sword Grade Sword of Gaia had already withstood their unique skills, and even his personal shield had been shattered. It was reasonable to say that Longsha Jendi should not have the guts to fight against the 3 of them again. After all, if they continued to fight, Longsha Jendi's life might be in danger. According to the guess of the 3 Yuan Kus, Longsha Jendi should have directly left and hid in London, no longer paying attention to them. But the 3 Yuan Kus had never expected that Longsha Jendi would actually come back. Longsha, you have gone too far. Do you really want to die? Then the 3 of us will fulfill your wish today. Guan Yu looked angrily at Longsha Jendi and said, Humph. My world is righteous. How can you, Yuan Kus, come and go as you please? I, Longsha Jendi, will teach you a good lesson today and let you know the power of humans. Longsha Jendi shouted loudly. At the same time, some staff members took the risk of bringing out a camera and aimed it at Longsha Jendi in the dimensional wall, and began to film the whole battle in the dimensional wall. Alright, brothers, although we usually have a lot of disagreements, today we must join hands and let this shameless guy know the power of the 3 of us. Tai Muzhen looked at the other 2 and said, Yes, Yes. Tesla and Guan Yu nodded. Today, Long Shijendi's actions had made their anger go beyond the limit. If they did not teach Long Shi an unforgettable lesson today, they would really have no face to stay in this world. Long Shijendi, take my blade. Guan Yu took the lead in launching an attack. Brandishing the green dragon crescent blade in his hand, he rushed towards Long Shijendi. General Guan, your opponent is me. Suddenly, a sword appeared out of thin air. A white-bearded pirate sword immortal blocked Guan Yu's green dragon crescent blade. Pirate, do you want to die? An immortal sword wielder dares to stop me. Guan Yu's eyes widened as he berated. General Guan, I'm not talented. I've fought countless opponents in my life, but I've never fought with a flood-level Yuan Ku. It just so happens that General Guan is here today, and my hands are very itchy. I am willing to compete with General. The pirate sword immortal said with a smile. Humph. You, a guy who can't even beat a spirit sword-level swordbearer, actually has the face to say that you want to compete with this general. Very well, this general will chop your old bones into pieces. The two of them didn't talk much nonsense and directly started fighting inside the dimensional barrier. Although Guan Yu was one level higher than the pirate sword immortal, in order to break through the dimensional barrier, he had already consumed a lot of his strength. In the end, when he used his unique skill, he even consumed his own origin. Therefore, although he still had the upper hand, he was unable to defeat the pirate sword immortal in a short period of time. In short, Guan Yu had no time to fight with Long Shijendi. The two of us go. They don't have a second pirate sword immortal. Seeing Guan Yu and the pirate sword immortal fighting, Temujin said to Tesla. All right, you help me block, I'm going to communicate with Hell, Tesla said lightly, which made Temujin angry. This Tesla actually wanted him to be a meat shield. But the three of them knew Yuan Ku very well. Tesla was indeed not the melee Yuan Ku. His strength lay in the endless thunder and lightning, so there was no reason for Tesla to rush to the front and fight. Therefore, Temujin finally brandished his saber and charged forward. But before Temujin's saber could get close to Long Shijendi's body, a long sword flew out and, after a crisp sound of impact, abruptly stopped Temujin. Who are you? Looking at the man in front of him blocking his way, Temujin said somewhat manically. Junior Guhan pays respect to Genghis Khan. Guhan bowed and said lightly. You are Guhan. Temujin showed an expression of sudden realization. I've heard of you. You are the one who finally destroyed the operation of the Western magical beasts, killed that idiot Loki, and saved Yuzhong City, the master of the sword garret of Yuzhong City, Guhan? So Genghis Khan still knows this Junior's humble name. But Junior is no longer the master of the sword garret of Yuzhong City. Now Junior is just an ordinary sword bearer. Guhan laughed. You are not ordinary. By the way, why did I hear that you are still wanted by humans? Is it because you were bullied by the son of that bastard Long Shi and he gave you power to oppress others? Temujin maliciously provoked. Why don't you learn from your sword immortal and join our martyr's palace? I promise to give you the title of king, Lord Genghis Khan. We are all smart people, so let's not talk nonsense. Take this. Guhan raised his Juzian sword and prepared to fight with Temujin. Wait. Temujin waved his hand. I have one more thing to ask you. What is the relationship between you and Jiyu Shahan who disturbed my stronghold? She is my real sister. Guhan answered quickly and without any hesitation. Since you are able to appear here instead of helping your sister, it seems that your sister has already escaped. Temujin said with a cold face. Great Khan, my sister and brother Li Bai have escaped safely. By the way, that Jeeb is also dead, so there is no need to worry about him anymore. Guhan said lightly. Good. Very good. Temujin gritted his teeth and said, then today I will use your life to comfort my dead Jeeb. Hearing the tragic death of his men, Temujin suddenly became furious. How could he still care about Long Shijendi in the sky? On the spot, he fought with Guhan. F***ck. Seeing this scene, Tesla's face turned pale. Now that Guan Yu and Genghis Khan were pinned down by their respective opponents, didn't this mean that he had to face Long Shijendi directly? Are you kidding me? I am a long-range Yuan Ku. How can I fight with a sword mistress who has full melee skill points? But Tesla's ridicule had no effect. Seeing that Guan Yu and Temujin were pinned down according to his plan, Long Shijendi smiled. The sword of Gaia at his waist was once again unsheathed, and the Cold Emperor sword-level sword mistress Gaia pounced on Tesla. What? How did your personal shield completely recover? After fighting with Gaia for a while, Tesla suddenly found that Gaia's personal shield had actually recovered to its full state. This shocked Tesla to the extreme. Gaia was not an ordinary sword mistress. She could recover her personal shield after resting for 10 or 20 minutes. Gaia was an Emperor sword-level sword mistress. Once her personal shield was broken, it would take at least a week or more to fully recover. But now, only less than 10 minutes had passed. How could Gaia's personal shield suddenly recover to its full state? Could it be? Tesla raised his head and looked at the smiling Long Shijendi, and a terrible guess emerged in his heart. This Guhan, you're really willing to give me 1,000 drops of Emperor blood just like that? Long Shijendi thought happily. Guhan was very straightforward. Not only did he give Long Shijendi the Emperor blood that he had promised, but he also doubled the amount, giving him 1,000 drops of Emperor blood. Long Shijendi only took about 450 drops of Emperor blood to restore himself to his peak state. Then, he poured another 300 drops of Emperor blood on Gaia's sword, using the power of the Emperor blood to quickly recover his damaged personal shield. Long Shijendi used 750 drops of Emperor blood in one go, which was equivalent to the total amount of Emperor blood he had accumulated for 5 years. In the end, there were 300 drops of Emperor blood left, which Long Shijendi carefully stored. It could be considered that he had earned Emperor blood this time. However, when he thought of how he had to hand over 300 drops of Emperor blood to the Liunyan family every 10 years, Long Shijendi felt his heart ache. Tesla and Gaia had fought for about 10 minutes, and he had also suffered a lot of damage. As mentioned before, as a long-range Tesla was completely no match for a melee sword mistress. Moreover, this sword mistress was Gaia's sword. Among all the Emperor sword-level sword mistresses, it was known for its toughness and defense. In these two aspects, it was at the peak. Once entangled by Gaia, unless it was the desolate level Yuan Ku or the opponent voluntarily giving up, it would be impossible to escape. Ah! Tesla screamed. Due to his carelessness, Gaia's attack had hit his vital point. A large amount of blood flowed out of his body, which was undoubtedly one disaster after another. However, this attack had also made Tesla understand. He seemed to have figured everything out at this moment, and anxiously shouted to his other two companions, "Not good, Long Shijendi wants to kill the 3 of us?" What? What? Guan Yu and Temujin were stunned at the same time. Tesla's words sounded like a joke to them. The 3 of them were flood-level Yuan Ku, second only to the desolate-level Yuan Ku in this world. Moreover, there were 3 of them here at the same time. Did Long Shijendi eat leopard's gall? He actually wanted to kill the 3 of them, flood-level Yuan Ku. This was simply the biggest joke in the world, okay? No way. Until this moment, both Guan Yu and Temujin still did not believe that the 3 of them could possibly die here. "You 2 idiots," Temujin said while struggling to resist Gaia's attack. "If you don't come to save me, I'm going to die in the hands of Long Shi. If I die, you 2 won't be able to survive." Tesla, don't be an alarmist. Gaia's personal shield is gone. How can she fight you? How can you die in his hands? Temujin said with some disbelief. Damn it, open your dog eyes and see if Gaia's personal shield is still there. Upon hearing Tesla's words, Temujin turned his head to observe Gaia. Only now did he realize that the personal shield of Gaia's sword had been completely restored. No, there's something wrong. Guan Yu, the 2 of us can't fight anymore. Hurry up and help Tesla. The 3 of us have to stick together. Understanding this, Temujin was ready to leave Guhan, who was still fighting with him, and rushed to Tesla's side with all his strength to ensure that Tesla would not die in the hands of Long Shijendi. Genghis Khan, where are you looking? Your opponent is me. There was no way Guhan would let Temujin leave, so he immediately went up to him. Get out of here. Temujin used the saber in his hand to perform a set of exquisite sword technique. This set of sword technique was the result of a lifetime of fighting. When Temujin became Genghis Khan, this set of sword technique was even more blessed by the heavens. It had the power to cut off the karma of fate. Once hit by this sword, not only would the body be damaged, but even the past, future, fate, karma of the sword wielder would be damaged. It was really a powerful move. Even Longsha Jendi had to temporarily avoid this sword and did not dare to meet it head-on. But in the face of an opponent like Guhan, his sword technique suddenly became useless. In front of Guhan, his sword technique was as fragile as a child's sword technique. No matter how he attacked, he could never touch the opponent's body. Instead, he was constantly injured by Guhan. But at this time, the weakness of Guhan as a spirit sword wielder was also revealed. Unless Guhan used a big move or used the Sword of Chaos, even with the support of the Zhuxian sword, it would be difficult to cause any fatal damage to Temujin, who was at the flood level, Yuan Ku. Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out of here! Temujin had really tried his best. He had used all the means he could, but he still could not slip away from Guhan, who was like a loach. Guan Yu. I can't leave for the time being. Hurry up and help Tesla, or our lives will be in danger, Temujin hurriedly said to Guan Yu, who was fighting with the pirate sword immortal. Guan Yu was also suffering but could not say it out loud. This pirate sword immortal was fighting with all his might, without any regard for his own safety or endurance. He used all kinds of big moves, as well as moves that might consume his origin, regardless of the cost. In the past, Guan Yu would have welcomed such a battle, because in 20 minutes at most, the pirate sword immortal would have consumed all his strength in advance because of his reckless fighting, and in the end, Guan Yu would be able to easily win. This was a battle with almost a 100% chance of winning. But the problem was that in these 20 minutes or so, he had to bear the attacks of the pirate sword immortal at the same level as himself. He absolutely could not be distracted during this period of time to help Tesla. Your Majesty, the pirate sword immortal and I can only hold on for 20 minutes at most. You only have 20 minutes. Guhan's voice sounded in Longsha Jendi's ears. I got it. Longsha Jendi clenched his teeth. After all, the gap between Guhan and the pirate sword immortal and the two flood-level Yuan Ku was too big. They must have used all their capital to be able to hold on for 20 minutes. Therefore, they must get rid of this Tesla within these 20 minutes. Gaia. Use the law of Earth. Longsha Jendi finally issued such an order to Gaia. Are you sure? Gaia asked hesitantly. There's no time to hesitate. It's time to send it. Longsha Jendi said firmly. Okay. Gaia nodded obediently. The law of Earth was Gaia's unique skill, which could make the power of the whole Earth gather on his body. As long as there was soil under his feet, Gaia could exert 10 times his original strength. But the law of Earth had a great shortcoming, that was, it caused too much damage to the land. Once the law of Earth was used in a certain place, the origin of the land would be damaged. For a long time in the future, the land that had been absorbed by the law of Earth would dry up and crack. In short, it would become a barren wasteland. If it were in other places, there would be no scruples in using the law of Earth, but this was the periphery of London. At that time, the whole city would be out of luck. London itself might not be damaged by the dimensional wall, but the land around London would not bear a single grain of rice for the next 50 years. Chapter 1236. Poochie. Tesla's whole body was sent flying. His chest was completely stained with dark red blood, and he no longer had his original neat image. His hair was disheveled, and he looked extremely unkempt. He looked like a beggar who had been driven out of his home. You're crazy. You're actually using the law of the Earth on your own land. Tesla spat out a mouthful of blood and stared at Gaia, dumbfounded. Ha ha. It seems that I'm being unreasonable. I thought I was a scientist, but I forgot that this is a battlefield of life and death. Tesla suddenly grabbed a thunderbolt in his hand, which looked just like Zeus Thunder God's halberd. Tesla directly inserted the thunderbolt into his chest, and then his whole body began to emit waves of piercingly cold electric light. Come on. I'd like to see whether your law of the earth is stronger, or my law of communication is stronger. Tesla's whole body's power skyrocketed more than 10 times in an instant, and unexpectedly did not lose to Gaia, who was possessed by the law of the earth. The law of the earth has been used, and the law of communication has also been forced out. It seems that Longsha Jendi is determined to kill us. Seeing Tesla's desperate fight, Temujin suddenly understood that the situation had reached an extremely dangerous point. If they did not think of a way to save Tesla's life now, after Tesla died, they would not be able to survive either. Your Majesty Genghis Khan, you can also use your power of laws. Hearing Temujin talking to himself, Guhan suddenly said with a smile. You're actually encouraging me to use the power of laws. Temujin looked at Guhan with a dull look in his eyes. Don't you know that if I use the power of laws, you won't even be able to live for a minute? Your Majesty, even if you don't want to, it's not the end of the line yet. Your Majesty Genghis Khan, there's no need for you to use the power of laws. Moreover, even if your Majesty uses the power of the rule, it's not a big deal. Not only can I live for a minute, but I can also live for another hour, Guhan said bluntly. Indeed, Guhan had hit the nail on the head. The power of the natural order was a power that only Yuan Ku, or an emperor sword-level sword wielder, possessed. To put it bluntly, it was the use of the power of the natural order of the world to launch an attack on the opponent. Regardless of whether it was Gaia's terror precept or Tesla's communication precept, they were actually the power of the natural order. One was the natural order of the earth, while the other was the natural order of thunder. However, the rule power was not something that could be used as one wished. It was fine for desolate-level Yuan Ku and top-notch emperor sword-wielders. It was not a big deal for them to use it. However, the Hong-grade Yuan Ku didn't have such freedom. Once he used the power of rule, he would have to bear the backlash of the power of rule, which would be a long period of painful torture. It was said that after Sword Mistress Gaia used the power of rule, she would be petrified for about half a year. Tesla's body, on the other hand, would constantly feel the pain of having his heart pierced by hundreds of millions of volts of electricity. In short, unless it was necessary, the Hong-grade Yuan Ku would not use his own power of rule at all. However, there was an advantage to using the power of rule, which was that the intensity of the battle would increase by more than 10 times in an instant. A battle that might have taken a day to decide the outcome would often be decided in less than 10 minutes. This was also the reason why Longsha Jendi had ordered Gaia to use the terror precept directly. At this time, Temujin was still hesitating whether to use the power of rule or not. Perhaps he could defeat Guhan before Tesla died without using the power of rule? While he was hesitating, Temujin and Guhan fought in a stalemate for 7 or 8 minutes. As for Kangya and Adam, who had fought with Guhan before, one was a little lowly who only knew how to eat. The other was an irrational giant, so he did not use his power of rule. But in fact, they could also use the power of rule. P.S. The author admits that the setting of the power of rule was actually added later. Some readers complained to the author that the battles of the 100-class Yuan Bandit looked very monotonous and weren't even as strong as the Yang-class Yuan Bandit. They wondered if the 100-class Yuan Bandit should have his own special power. The author thought it made sense, so he added the setting of the power of rule, spreading the power that originally belonged to Guhan to the other Yuan Kus, so this paragraph seems a bit abrupt. After all, the previous Hong-grade Yuan Ku had never used the power of rule, so the author will explain it here. I'm sorry. Temujin, save me. I can't hold on any longer. At this time, Tesla really could not hold on any longer. Gaia's ability was originally above Tesla's, plus the suppression of close-range combat over long-range combat, and more importantly, the suppression of laws. Gaia's power of rule was the law of the earth, while Tesla's power of rule was the law of alternating electricity. If Tesla's power of rule was simply the law of lightning, then Gaia's law of earth would be at the same level as his, and there would be no suppression between laws. But Tesla's power of rule was the law of alternating electricity, one of the 2 branches of the law of lightning. It did not contain all the power of rule of lightning, and in terms of level, it was naturally weaker than Gaia's law of earth. All kinds of disadvantages entangled together, which doomed Tesla's failure. After 7 or 8 minutes of the collision of the power of rule, the lightning on Tesla's body had been extinguished by 70 to 80%, which was a sign that he was about to die. If the last 20% of the lightning was also gone, then Tesla would really die in the hands of Long Shijendi. Seeing that Guhan was still alive and kicking, Temujin knew that it was impossible to force Guhan back in a few minutes. But if he did not save the dying Tesla in a few minutes, then when Gaia had time to spare, he would be the next to die. You forced me to use the law of conquest. Just as Temujin was about to use his power of rule, he suddenly sensed a similar power of rule erupting from the left. Law of the blade! Guan Yu roared, and the green dragon crescent blade in his hand instantly grew more than 10 times, becoming more than 40 meters long. It seems that Guan Yu has also been forced to use the power of rule. Temujin breathed a sigh of relief, and quickly held back the law of conquest that he was about to use. Since Guan Yu had already used the power of rule, he could instantly get rid of the pirate sword fairy to rescue Tesla, who was in danger, and he did not need to use the power of rule anymore. On the other side, after seeing Guan Yu use the power of rule, Tesla's momentum suddenly shook. He, who was originally in decline, suddenly made a few beautiful counterattacks, and had the momentum of a salted fish turning over. Your Majesty, this old man can't stop him. The pirate sword fairy transmitted his voice to Long Shijendi. At this time, the pirate sword fairy was not much better than Tesla. Blood was constantly flowing from the corner of his mouth, and the personal shield covering his body had consumed 80% of its energy. The pirate sword fairy was already an arrow at the end of its flight. In the face of Guan Yu, who had used the power of rule, the pirate sword fairy was really powerless. Hurry up. Kill Tesla quickly. Don't take into account the power of the law of earth. Seeing this scene, Long Shijendi was also anxious. Now was the most critical time. If he could kill Tesla before Guan Yu came to rescue him, then the overall situation would be set. But if Guan Yu and Tesla fought side by side, then it would be very funny. The great achievement that he was about to get would probably fly away. But would he really make it in time? At this time, the pirate sword fairy was already powerless to stop Guan Yu, and it would only take a few seconds for Guan Yu to rush to Tesla's side. Long Shijendi asked himself if he could kill Tesla in a few seconds even if he used all his trump cards. What should I do? Should I use that thing? Long Shijendi probed his dimensional pocket with his thoughts. In his dimensional pocket, there was a big killer weapon. Once this big killer weapon was used, it would not be difficult to kill Tesla in seconds. But once he used it, it would not be so easy to find a second one. Sir Pirate, let's change hands. Just as Jendi was hesitating, he suddenly heard Guhan say to the pirate sword fairy. The pirate sword fairy was stunned at first, and then instantly opened a void door beside him. In the blink of an eye, he passed through the void door and appeared at Guhan's side. He took over Guhan's task and fought with Temujin, who was somewhat stupefied and had not had time to react. Jiyu Han, on the other hand, put down Temujin and charged at Guan Yu. Damn it! It's all this damn dimensional wall's fault. Seeing the pirate sword fairy and Guhan easily pass through the void door, Temujin clenched his teeth in anger. If it were not for Long Shijendi and Jiyu Shahan's sneak attack, first being trapped by the dimensional wall and then being sealed by the void array, making it impossible for them to move through the void door, they would have escaped long ago. Why would they need to risk their lives by using the power of law? But this Guhan is really bold. He actually took the initiative to deal with Guan Yu, who used the power of law. Does this guy not want to live? Temujin thought again. He felt that Guhan's head might have been kicked by a donkey, otherwise he would not have made such a stupid move. Boom! With a violent collision sound, Guhan and Guan Yu's 40-meter-long green dragon crescent moonblade collided. Just when everyone thought that Guhan would be easily sent flying by this green dragon crescent moonblade, something unexpected happened. When Guhan's sword hit Guan Yu's green dragon crescent moonblade, not only was Guhan not sent flying, but Guan Yu could not help but take 2 steps back. Obviously, Guan Yu had fallen into a disadvantageous position in this blow. The power of law. Guan Yu, Temujin, Tesla, and even Longsha Jendi and the pirate sword fairy all exclaimed in unison. They saw a scene that they could not believe in their entire lives. They actually saw the power of law in a spirit sword level swordsman. That ordinary longsword could actually block the green dragon crescent moonblade with the power of law. Apart from the fact that the longsword itself also represented law, there was absolutely no other explanation. You illusory person, how could you? As the direct opponent, Guan Yu's feeling was the most obvious. In that collision just now, Guan Yu had indeed felt the real power of law. And in terms of the level of the power of law, the level of Guhan's power of law seemed to be above his own power of law. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Guan Yu suddenly entered a berserk state, and the 40-meter-long green dragon crescent moon blade danced like a violent storm. If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would be scared silly. But Guhan did not panic in the slightest. The celestial sword in his hand deftly blocked each of Guan Yu's blades. Both sides collided with each other like this, without the slightest intention of retreating. Amazing. If it weren't for the fact that Guhan is only a spirit sword level sword wielder, if Guhan could have the power of an emperor sword level. No, only the power of an immortal sword level would be enough. As long as Guhan has the power of an immortal sword level, I'm afraid he can directly defeat Guan Yu, who has used the power of law, and not in this evenly matched state. Looking at this battle, Longsha Jendi could not help but sigh. But this is strange. Why is there such a gap between the power of law? Could it be that this is not an ordinary power of law, but the real power of law, the power of law comprehended by oneself? Longsha Jendi's pupils shrank, and he exclaimed in a low voice. Although as an emperor sword level sword wielder, he could also use rule power, this rule power was not something he had comprehended himself. Instead, it was something that came with his emperor sword level sword mistress, Gaia's sword. As long as he synchronized the emperor sword level sword mistress, he would be able to grasp the rule power. All the emperor sword level sword wielder in the world had obtained their rule power the same way. However, there was a legend among the emperor sword level sword wielder. It was said that there were two geniuses in this world, Kunzu and Jitian Jendi. Before they had become emperor sword level sword wielder, they had already mastered the power of law. Therefore, their rule power was not given to them by their own emperor sword level sword mistresses, but they comprehended it through their own comprehension. The rule power that they obtained was even purer. It was the rule power that truly belonged to the sword wielder. Therefore, this rule power had an innate advantage when facing other Yuenko's rule power or emperor sword level sword wielder's rule power. It came with a natural level suppression buff. More importantly, the power of law comprehended by oneself was different from the power of law bestowed by the sword mistress. The power of law comprehended by oneself did not need to bear the backlash, and was the power that truly belonged to the sword wielder. Never mind, it doesn't matter if he comprehended it or not. I don't have time to care about his business. It's more important to kill Tesla first. Longsha Jendi woke up from his thoughts and turned to command Gaia's battle with all his strength. On the other hand, seeing that his own reinforcements had been blocked by a mere spirit sword level sword wielder, Tesla, whose momentum had skyrocketed, declined in an instant, and became even weaker than before. The lightning on his body became more and more erratic, and it looked like he was about to be defeated by Gaia's power of law. Tesla, hold on. I'm coming to save you. Conquer the rule. Temujin, who had thought that he could hold back, helplessly found that he could not hold back in the end. In the end, he could only burst out his own power of law. I can't hold it anymore. The pirate sword immortal was also a bit of a coward. Seeing that Temujin had used his power of law, he directly retreated from the front of the battlefield. Temujin was overjoyed. At this time, Guhan was entangled with Guan Yu, and Longsha Jendi did not have the emperor sword level sword mistress in hand, so he did not dare to come out to fight. Thus, it should not be a problem for him to protect Tesla's life. Thinking of this, Temujin flew directly toward the distressed Tesla. It's over. It's all for nothing. Seeing this scene, Longsha Jendi sighed in his heart, and at the same time, his mind once again entered the dimensional pocket. When he was ready to use his trump card, Guhan once again gave Longsha Jendi an unexpected surprise. Zhuxian, I'm counting on you. After Guhan blocked Guan Yu's green dragon crescent blade with his sword, he directly threw out the Zhuxian sword in his hand. The Zhuxian sword turned into the form of a sword mistress in the air, like a goddess descending to the world, and blocked in front of Temujin. Lady Zhuxian. Seeing the arrival of Lady Zhuxian, the first to react was not the others, but the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas who were onlookers. The moment the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas saw Lady Zhuxian, as the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, they were so scared that they knelt on the ground at the first moment, exclaiming the name of Lady Zhuxian, and at the same time looking at Lady Zhuxian, shivering. F***CK. You released the sword mistress at this time. Faced with the Ulta's sword that suddenly appeared in front of him and discovered that it could also use the power of the natural order, Temujin could not help but want to curse out loud, not knowing whether to say it or not. Guan Yu. That guy's sword mistress has been released, and he can't stop you anymore. Hurry up and save Tesla. Although he was a little flustered by the appearance of the Zhuxian sword, he quickly reacted. Since Guhan's sword mistress had been released, he had become a turtle without a shell, and had lost the power to entangle Guan Yu. Was there no difference in this? The only difference was who was going to save Tesla. Okay. Guan Yu nodded, and just as he was about to sweep past the toothless Guhan, Guhan's lips curled into a smile. Then, in front of the crowd, under the gazes of the three Yuan Ku, the pirate immortal swordsman, and Long Shijendi, he took out another sword mistress from his dimensional pocket, unsheathed it, and released it into the air as another beautiful girl. Oh my god! Lady Juexian. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, who had not yet hardened their knees, were once again scared out of their wits. Once again, they cried out the name of Lady Juexian, and continued to tremble. Are my eyes deceiving me? The pirate immortal swordsman and Long Shijendi looked at Lady Juexian, who had just been released, and then at the sword mistress who was still fighting with Temujin. After confirming that Guhan had released two sword mistresses at the same time, the shock in their minds was like a tsunami, and it could be said that their entire worldview had been overturned in an instant. In this world, there was actually someone who could release two sword mistresses at the same time. Long Shijendi and the pirate immortal swordsman had a curse that they did not know if they should say. Chapter 1237. The reason why Guhan concealed the secret that he could have two sword ladies at the same time for a long time before this was because treasuring a jade ring would become a crime. If he didn't have the power to protect his secret, he would just be courting death. But now, the situation was completely different. The current Guhan was no longer the Guhan who needed to be cautious to protect his secret. The current Guhan could resist the flood-level Yuan Ku with his own strength, and he could challenge one of the strongest Emperor Sword-level swordbearers in the world as a Spirit Sword-level swordbearer. To put it bluntly, apart from the few Desolation-level Yuan Ku, Guhan couldn't think of anyone else in this world who could pose a threat to his life. In this case, there was no need for Guhan to hide it anymore. When one didn't have the strength, it was wisdom to pretend to be a pig, but when one had the strength, one would be an idiot. Guhan was not a good person who didn't ask for anything in return, nor was he the kind of Lei Feng who did good deeds without leaving his name. Guhan wanted to save the world, so Guhan must obtain the whole world. The Emperor ruled the world, and the Emperor also had to bear the burden of the world. Guhan had decided to use today's battlefield to strangle the three flood-level Yuan Ku bearers as a basis to spread his prestige in the entire human world and the Yuan Ku world. Guhan wanted to let all humans know that from today on, there was another Supreme Emperor rising in the human world. There was no need to hide anything anymore. Guhan had decided to show his strength in front of all humans little by little. The appearance of these two sword ladies at the same time was the first step for Guhan to shock the world. If you don't believe it, Long Shijendi was the first human to be deeply shocked by Guhan's dual sword ladies. Yes, both are spirit sword level sword ladies. That's right, they're all sword maidens of spirit sword level. Long Shijendi looked at the two Guhan's sword maidens that appeared in the air at the same time, and once again confirmed the level of these two sword maidens. What did this mean? This meant that Guhan had created an unprecedented legend, becoming the first sword wielder in history to possess two spiritual swords at the same time. This was something that even Zhe Tianjiandi and Sir Kunzu had not been able to do, and from the looks of it, these two spiritual sword-level sword mistresses were a bit too strong to be able to suppress both Guan Yu and Temujin at the same time. That's right, the combat power displayed by Zhu Xian and Celestial Demise was simply too astonishing. These two spirit sword-grade sword maidens fought separately, and with their own strength, they were actually able to suppress Guan Yu and Temujin, or rather, they were able to beat them to the point where they were somewhat unable to hold on. The opponent of Altus was Temujin. Temujin's swordsmanship focused on violence and aggressiveness, full of murderous intent. On the other hand, Altus's swordsmanship was even more violent and aggressive than Temujin's. The murderous intent filled the entire sky, giving a feeling of suffocation. In my previous life, there were no less than 10 million humans who died in my hands. Although in this life, there are not as many as in my previous life, each and every one of them are dragons and phoenixes among men. The combined murderous intent of both lives is enough to overturn the whole world, but to be suppressed by a sword maiden in terms of murderous intent, this is really too frightening. Temujin could not understand why his murderous intent was inferior to that of a sword maiden. If Temujin knew that the four swords of Altus had once formed the immortal execution formation and slaughtered tens of thousands of true immortals, he would definitely understand. And what made Temujin feel even more despair was that his power of laws actually had no effect on Altus. Logically speaking, in a battle, the side who had the power of laws against an opponent who did not have the power of laws would have a decisive and terrifying suppressive ability. But what Temujin could not understand was that this sword maiden in front of him, whether it was the strength of her energy or the level of her wielder, was clearly only a spirit sword-grade sword maiden, but she could also use the power of laws like an emperor sword-grade sword maiden. What was even more frightening was that this sword maiden's power of laws was not like theirs, which borrowed the power of laws between heaven and earth. This sword maiden's power of laws seemed to originate from within her own body. To put it simply, whether it was Temujin, Gaia, or Yuan Ku and sword maidens, their power of laws was borrowed from heaven and earth. They borrowed and returned, so after using the power of laws, there would be strong side effects. The ownership of the power of laws was in the hands of heaven and earth, not in their hands. But Altus's power of laws belonged to her and was emitted from her own body. The ownership of laws was in the hands of Altus itself. This was very frightening. This meant that Altus could use its own power of laws without fear of any backlash. Moreover, this power of laws was even purer, and in terms of level, it naturally suppressed the power of laws that Temujin borrowed. Whether it was sword techniques or the power of rules, Temujin was horrified to discover that he was far inferior to Altus in both areas. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that Altus itself was too low in level, only at the level of a spiritual sword. Therefore, its attack was far inferior to Temujin's, so Temujin did not have to worry about his own life. The same thing happened to Guan Yu. If the Immortal Eradication Sword's attack was said to be filled with absolute killing intent, then the Immortal Extinguish Sword's attack was extremely complicated and confusing. When fighting with Celestial Extinguish, Guan Yu would even fall into illusions from time to time. He had just blocked a strike from Celestial Extinguish, and then he would find his beloved big brother standing in front of him. He had slashed at Celestial Extinguish, but the result was that the slash seemed to have landed on Diao Chan's body, which made Guan Yu's heart ache. Although Guan Yu was able to see through these illusions as soon as they appeared thanks to his strength as a range-level Yuan bandit, the continuous appearance of these illusions made Guan Yu extremely annoyed. In the end, his mind was even a little confused. Soon, he clearly could have used a better move, but because of his momentary confusion, he made a mistake, giving the Immortal Extinguishing Sword an opportunity to counterattack. In short, these two flood-level Yuan Ku were completely suppressed by their opponents, and their lives might not be in danger for a while, but it was impossible for them to leave to help Tesla, who was being attacked by Gaia. Hey! This is the first time I've experienced the fighting style of a normal swordsman. Seeing that his Altus and Celestial Extinguish had perfectly suppressed their opponents, Guhan said with some emotion. For a long time, Guhan had been fighting above his level, and he often relied on Guhan's own swordsmanship to fight. He had never been like a normal swordsman, who relied on the power of his sword maidens. He only needed to hide in a safe place and enjoy his life. Until today, Guhan could leisurely take out a sofa from his dimensional pocket, and then leisurely sit on it. He stretched lazily, and at the same time watch his two sword maidens fight. This was a real swordsman. He had lived his days like a dog. Damn it. I'm so pissed. Seeing Guhan's leisurely look, Celestial Extinguish was so angry that its teeth itched. Well, we haven't fought for 1,000 years, so it's just the right time to come out and exercise our muscles, Altus said indifferently. Without its sister's support, Celestial Extinguish had nothing to say, and could only vent its unhappiness on Guan Yu. For a moment, Guan Yu became unstable. Damn it. If this goes on, Guhan will steal the limelight. After all, Longsha Jendi was an Emperor Sword-level swordsman. After the initial shock, he quickly recovered from it, and then keenly discovered a problem. At this time, all the swordsman's attention was on Guhan's two sword maidens, and he, a genuine Emperor Sword-level swordsman, seemed to have become the background. This was unacceptable to Longsha Jendi, who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make a great contribution. Gaia, let me help you. Longsha Jendi made up his mind, and at the same time, took out his immortal sword-level sword maidens. In the blink of an eye, he appeared at Gaia's side, and together with Gaia, besieged Tesla. Seeing Longsha Jendi personally taking action, Guhan became a little interested. He glanced at Longsha's battle, and then couldn't help but curl his lips. This Longsha Jendi's swordsmanship was really unsightly. At most, it was at the level of his 14-year-old self. Guhan didn't think that at the age of 14, his swordsmanship could already crush 99% of the human beings in the world. For Longsha Jendi, who had climbed to the position of Jendi from an ordinary swordsman, to have such swordsmanship was already a very remarkable thing. It was like a singer running to an actor, and unexpectedly being able to make $1 billion in the box office was already very remarkable. But no matter how bad Longsha Jendi's swordsmanship was, he definitely had the fighting strength of an immortal sword level. Coupled with Gaia, Tesla's situation had already reached a point of no return. The lightning in his body had already declined to the extent of a flame. It could be foreseen that in 5 or 6 seconds at most, this flood-level Yuan Ku would become the first sacrifice of today's battle. Human beings, I won't let you have an easy time. Don't think of winning so easily. Tesla, who had been forced to a dead end, threw his life aside and decided to perish together with Longsha Jendi. Even if he couldn't kill Longsha Jendi, he would absolutely make him recuperate in bed for 10 years. Therefore, Tesla's body suddenly began to crack, and his skin and flesh slowly peeled off like sand, leaving only a ball of lightning floating quietly in front of Longsha Jendi. Victory! Seeing this ball of lightning, Longsha Jendi breathed a sigh of relief. This was Tesla's core of the law, which was an existence similar to godhood. As long as this core of the law was shattered, Tesla would be completely dead, and there would be absolutely no possibility of resurrection. Gaia, do it. Longsha Jendi calmly said to Gaia while suppressing the ecstasy in his heart. Longsha Jendi was not stupid. He had expected that Tesla would inevitably be unwilling and would probably perish together with him at the last moment. Therefore, Longsha Jendi let Gaia, who was more powerful and had a stronger defense, destroy Tesla's core of the law, while Longsha Jendi began to retreat quickly, intending to stay away from this dangerous thing. How could Tesla let Longsha Jendi go so easily? In less than 1,000th of a blink of an eye, Tesla's core of the law appeared beside Longsha in a strange way. Tesla's law was electricity, and electricity could be conducted at will. In particular, when Tesla only had the core of the law left, the power of the law could burst out in a purer way. Before his death, Tesla deliberately shot a ball of lightning into the sea, causing the seawater to burst out in an instant, so that the whole air was filled with water droplets from the seawater. Seawater was salty, and its conductivity was extremely strong. Therefore, Tesla instantly appeared beside Longsha Jendi by conducting electricity through the seawater droplets permeating the air. No one in the world had ever beaten Tesla to the point that he only had the core of the law left, so no one knew that Tesla actually had such a trump card. Therefore, Longsha Jendi was stunned. He looked at the core of the law that suddenly appeared in front of him and described the frightening power of thunder and lightning. At this time, his sword mistress was still at least 1 second away from him. Boom. Of course, Tesla would not give Long Shijendi this 1 second. Almost at the moment it appeared, the core of the law exploded without hesitation. A roar that could shatter everyone's eardrums enveloped the entire dimensional wall. The staff responsible for recording outside the dimensional wall directly covered their ears and knelt on the ground. Blood flowed out of their ears. At the moment when the core of the law broke out, their eardrums had been pierced by the shrill sound. Fortunately, the dimensional wall blocked the voltage as high as several billion volts, otherwise, no ordinary person within a radius of 10 kilometers could have survived. Old Tesla. When Guan Yu and Temujin found that their eyes were shrouded by a pale and dazzling electric light, and they could not see anything, they realized that Tesla, who had been fighting with them for hundreds of years and getting along with them for hundreds of years, was really dead. The two of them uttered 2 mournful cries in unison. These 2 mournful cries were for Tesla, but they were also for themselves. However, at the moment when Tesla's core of the law broke out, they also received the last message from Tesla. I will perish together with Long Shijendi. Don't bother me anymore. Take advantage of the fact that Long Shijendi is seriously injured to escape quickly. So the question was Long Shijendi seriously injured by Tesla's perishing together? Guan Yu and Temujin were absent-mindedly dealing with the Celestial Extinguish Sword and the Celestial Slaying Sword. All their attention was focused on the center of the explosion just now. They were looking forward to the scene of Long Shijendi's protective shield breaking and him falling to the ground covered in blood. After the blinding flash of lightning passed, a body covered in blood appeared in front of everyone. Great! Long Shi is finally injured. Seeing this scene, Guan Yu and Temujin cheered in unison, feeling that there was hope for them to escape. But the next second, the two of them fell into despair, because they found that the one covered in blood and seriously injured was not Long Shijendi, but Guhan. Thank you very much. Behind Guhan, Long Shijendi looked at Guhan with sincere gratitude. If it were not for Guhan standing in front of him and using his body as a meat shield for Long Shijendi, perhaps Long Shijendi would have been seriously injured and would not have been able to pursue the 2 Yuan coup. Your Majesty. Your Majesty. You are the main force. Don't let these Yuan coup escape. As soon as Guhan finished speaking, his whole body fell into the sea. Fortunately, Long Shijendi reacted quickly and caught Guhan's body, then directly cut his wrist and directly fed the golden blood in his body into Guhan's mouth. This was the fresh Emperor's blood. Long Shijendi was really moved by Guhan. Fortunately, saved me an Emperor's blood capsule. How could Guhan do a losing business? Long Shijendi's life-saving grace was now in his hands. Chapter 1238. Ji Yuhan had made up his mind to make a name for himself in the human world. He wanted to make Ji Yuhan the next ruler of the human race. However, this did not mean that Ji Yuhan had to ruin his relationship with the Emperor sword-level sword wielders. On the contrary, maintaining a good relationship with the Emperor sword-level sword wielders was extremely important. Otherwise, Ji Yuhan would have to start a massacre and cleanse the human race. He would have to kill all the humans who opposed him and then become the savior of the human race. Although there were many disharmony in the human world, on the whole, it was still good and relatively united. Once Guhan really started a civil war with the Emperor sword-level swordbearers, the loss would not only be the strength of mankind, but also the trust between mankind that had been maintained for 1,000 years. Brother Ji Yuhan, rest in peace. Leave the rest to me, your big brother. He did not know if anyone had noticed, but at this time, Long Shijendi no longer addressed himself as emperor in front of Guhan. This meant that Long Shijendi had secretly acknowledged that Guhan had the strength of an emperor sword-level swordbearer. Guan Yu, Temujin, die for this emperor. After settling Guhan, Long Shijendi looked at Guan Yu and Temujin with a gloomy expression. At the same time, Gaia, who had been freed up, also began to move towards Temujin. Obviously, Long Shijendi had targeted Temujin as his next target. Brother Guan Yu. The two of us must fight with our lives, otherwise, both of us will die here. When Temujin found out that he had been selected as the next target by Longsha Jendi, he began to panic and said to Guan Yu, "How do the two of us fight with our lives?" Guan Yu asked while dealing with the Celestial Demise sword. Did you notice that after Tesla's self-destruction attack, the energy of the dimensional wall is less than 5%? As long as one of us self-destructs, the dimensional wall will shatter in an instant. The void formation that restricts the void will also disappear, and we can escape through the void. Temujin said. So you're saying that one of us has to die? Guan Yu gritted his teeth and said. That's right, Brother Guan Yu. Now that Longsha Jendi is targeting me, I'm definitely going to die before you, so I might as well self-destruct like Brother Tesla and send Brother Guan Yu off. Temujin said vehemently. Are you that good? Guan Yu's eyes hesitated for a moment, but he felt that there seemed to be no problem. Since Longsha Jendi's next target was Temujin, then Temujin was bound to die before him. Therefore, Temujin was only doing him a favor that didn't require money. No matter how he thought about it, Temujin shouldn't have any ill intentions. But Brother Guan Yu, I hope you can do me a favor. Temujin asked again. What kind of help? As long as I can help you, I will definitely help you, Guan Yu said without hesitation. You also know that I have millions of soldiers. After I die, they will have no one to rely on and will definitely be bullied by others. I hope that Brother Guan Yu can be their backer, help and lead them, and find a way for them to live. Don't let them be bullied by others. Temujin said these words with tears almost streaming down his face. Okay, I promise you, as long as I'm around, I will never let your men be bullied by others, Guan Yu replied without hesitation. Good brother, I have a golden battle flag here, which is my personal keepsake. As long as you give this golden battle flag to my men, they will understand what I mean and listen to your leadership. As Temujin struggled to fend off the attacks of Gaia and Ultus, he tossed a golden flag to Guan Yu. Looking at the interaction between Temujin and Guan Yu, Longsha Jendi said to Guhan with some emotion, this Temujin is also a hero. He knows how to think for his men. It's a pity that he is Yuan Ku, otherwise I would definitely drink and chat with him. The fresh imperial blood was indeed extraordinary, and Guhan's injury quickly recovered a lot. However, because this was the injury caused by the self-detonation of a flood-level Yuan Ku, it contained a strong power of the law. The imperial blood could not be used like before, where it could quickly and completely heal the injured body as soon as it was used. At this time, Guhan had woken up from his coma. Although there was no problem with his movement, his body was still constantly bleeding, and various kinds of light could be faintly seen colliding on the wound. This was a confrontation between the power of the law. Before Guhan completely erased the power of the law on his wound, Guhan would not be able to completely recover his body. Not necessarily. Guhan shook his head, glanced indifferently at Temujin, who was resisting very firmly, and said with a smile, "This is an extremely cunning old fox. The last one to use the power of the law was him. I don't believe that he would be so willing to die here." Brother Guhan, you mean? Longsha Jendi squinted at Guhan. Look, there will be a good show later. Guhan smiled slightly, then moved his mouth to Longsha Jendi's ear and whispered a few words. Longsha Jendi's eyes lit up, revealing an expression of admiration. At this time, a super-large dimensional vortex covering almost tens of square kilometers slowly appeared in the sky in front of Longsha Jendi and Guhan. This time, Tesla is really dead. Upon seeing the appearance of the dimensional vortex, the Dragon Lion Sword Emperor heaved a sigh of relief. This meant that Tesla was indeed dead, and there was no possibility of any accidents or resurrection. Of course, this also meant that a large amount of money had appeared in front of Guhan and Longsha Jendi. The death of a Hong-level Yuan Ku was at least 5 million quarks of sword essence. Brother Guhan saved my life. I think Brother Guhan should enjoy this dimensional vortex alone. Longsha Jendi looked at the slowly shrinking dimensional vortex, which would disappear in a dozen seconds at most, and said with some pain. Although Longsha Jendi's sword essence had exceeded 20 million quarks, It seemed that he did not care about this 5 million quarks of sword essence. But in fact, Longsha Gendi's saliva was about to flow out. This was at least 1 million quarks of sword essence. No, if it weren't for your majesty, how could I, Guhan, kill a Hong-level Yuan Ku like Tesla by relying on my own strength? It would be better for your majesty and I to absorb the sword essence in the dimensional vortex together, Guhan said with a smile. What a joke. If Guhan really enjoyed the sword essence in this dimensional vortex alone, then his life-saving grace to Longsha Gendi would almost be gone. This was a very bad deal. Good. Longsha Gendi did not decline and brought Guhan to the side of the dimensional vortex. Longsha Gendi pulled out his immortal sword rank sword mother and sent it into the dimensional vortex, and then said to Guhan with a smile, "Do you want to let your spirit sword rank sword mother besiege Taimuzhen come down? Otherwise, if you only use a famous sword rank sword mother, it would be too much of a loss." There was a limit to the amount of sword essence that a sword mother could absorb in the dimensional vortex. For example, a famous sword rank sword mother could only absorb 100,000 quarks of sword essence at most. Therefore, Longsha Gendi said such words to Guhan, asking Guhan to let his spirit sword rank sword mother fly down, because the upper limit of sword essence that a spirit sword rank sword mother could absorb was 1 million quarks. No need. Guhan shook his head, took out his Chijian sword with a smile, and sent it together with Longsha Gendi. Then I won't be polite. Longsha Gendi smiled and began to absorb the sword essence in the dimensional vortex with all his strength. In the blink of an eye, 2 million quarks of sword essence had been absorbed into his immortal sword rank sword mother. At the same time, Longsha Gendi secretly looked at Guhan and thought to himself, as an emperor sword rank swordsman, my absorption speed of sword essence is about 20 times that of a spirit sword rank swordsman. At this time, Guhan should have absorbed 100,000 quarks of sword essence and can leave. But to Longsha Gendi's surprise, Guhan still placed his sword mother in the dimensional vortex, and Longsha Gendi could also feel that his opponent's sword mother was still continuously absorbing the sword essence in the dimensional vortex. Could it be that Guhan's absorption speed of sword essence is very slow, so he hasn't finished absorbing it yet? He has 2 spirit sword rank sword mothers for the first time. I don't believe that there are no side effects at all. Maybe the absorption speed of sword essence is a side effect. Longsha Gendi secretly guessed. Unfortunately, the result of his guess was worlds apart. Not only did Guhan's absorption speed of sword essence not decrease, but it was also several times that of a normal swordsman, only slower than Longsha Gendi, who was an emperor sword rank swordsman. Just now, Longsha Gendi had absorbed 2 million quarks of sword essence, while Guhan had also absorbed 400,000 quarks of sword essence. Although it was only 1/5 of Longsha Gendi's, it was not as exaggerated as 1/20. Guhan was a guy who would not let go of such a good benefit. If the starting point sword could really only absorb 100,000 quarks of sword essence, then Guhan would not hesitate to call down his execution immortal sword and use it to absorb sword essence. However, the starting point sword was not an ordinary sword mother, but a famous sword rank sword mother with the foundation of an emperor sword rank sword mother. When it killed Gilgamesh previously, it had absorbed 350,000 quarks of sword essence, and this had not reached the upper limit of the starting point sword. Until this time, when it shared a flood-level Yuan Ku with Longsha Gendi, the starting point sword's dimensional vortex had absorbed 800,000 quarks of sword essence, and it had not reached the limit. However, at this time, there was no more sword essence in the dimensional vortex. Strange, this flood-level Yuan Ku should have at least 5 million quarks of sword essence. Why did it only absorb 3 million quarks of sword essence? After the dimensional vortex closed, Longsha Gendi felt the increased sword essence in his immortal sword rank sword mother and muttered to himself with some doubts. 3 million plus Guhan's 100,000, it was only 4 million, which did not even reach the minimum standard of flood-level Yuan Ku. What the hell? Could it be that there are also fake flood-level Yuan Ku? Longsha Gendi shook his head, thinking that this was an accidental phenomenon, and did not think that Guhan on the side could secretly absorb 800,000 quarks of sword essence. On the other side, after Longsha Gendi and Guhan shared the dimensional vortex caused by Tesla's death, Temujin's battle situation also fell into a precarious situation. Just like Tesla, he was about to die. Longsha. This Khan will fight you to the death. A golden scimitar flew out of Temujin's body, and he was ready to follow Tesla's example just now, to find Longsha Jendi and perish together with him. Quick! Stop him for me. With the previous lesson, Longsha Jendi did not dare to be careless and immediately ordered Gaia. Juzian. Destroy this heart of the law on the spot. Guhan also ordered Juzian at the same time. Previously, Tesla's heart of the law was able to appear in front of Longsha Jendi because of the characteristics of his heart of the law itself, which could use conductive objects to move quickly. But Temujin's heart of the law did not have this ability. He could not suddenly appear in front of Longsha Jendi, and could only be stopped by the joint efforts of Juzian and Gaia Sword halfway, and Gaia Sword directly smashed the whole heart of the law. Temujin did not even have time to self-destruct before he died. Genghis Khan, you still want me to escape to help your men, but now it seems that all three of us are going to die here. Seeing that Temujin's self-destruction was stopped, Guan Yu smiled miserably, touched the golden war flag in his arms, and said with a wry smile. At the same time, he looked at the two sword maidens, Gaia Sword and Juzian, approaching him, ready to besiege him at the same time. There was not even a 1% chance of escape. Haha. I, Guan Yu, don't want to not even have the chance to self-destruct. Even if I die, I won't let you have it easy, Guan Yu roared. He was clearly not at the end of his rope, but he took the initiative to release his heart of the law from his body. This was a blood-red, seemingly smaller green dragon crescent blade. Open for me. Juzian and Gaia Sword arrived, and the smaller green dragon crescent blade slashed at Celestial Extinguish Sword in front of him. Damn. This old lady's beauty cannot be ruined by your hand. Seeing the great power of this blade, Celestial Extinguish Sword did not dare to meet it head-on, and directly dodged. As a result, the blade directly slashed at the dimensional wall behind Celestial Extinguish Sword. Immediately, the whole world began to tremble. The power of this blade not only surpassed Temujin's, but also the power of Tesla's self-destruction. Under this blade, the entire dimensional wall completely collapsed, and after the remaining power of the blade penetrated the dimensional wall, it even split a hill in the distance, raising the whole hill to the ground. In the end, a blade mark of 1 kilometer long and 50 meters deep was left on the ground. But no matter how powerful this blade was, it could not change Guan Yu's fate, because the reason why this blade had such great power was completely because Guan Yu had sacrificed his life. A dimensional vortex, larger than Tesla's, began to slowly form in the air, to receive Guan Yu's body. At this moment, under the shroud of the dimensional vortex, among the ruins of Guan Yu's corpse, a golden battle flag suddenly fluttered and fled into the sky at an extremely fast speed. As the battle flag fled, it shouted, Longsha and Jiyu Han, this Khan won't let you off. This Khan will definitely come back for revenge. Strange, isn't this the voice of Genghis Khan? Wasn't he already dead just now? How can his voice still be heard? The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas who were in charge of watching were puzzled. Brother Guhan, you're right. This Temujin is really cunning. He actually forged a fake core of the law to fool Guan Yu, and instead gave the real one to his opponent one step ahead of time. In the end, Guan Yu became his scapegoat. Longsha Jendi said with some admiration. It turned out that Temujin's previous generosity in dying and entrusting it to his subordinates were all fake. The golden scimitar was not the real core of the law at all. On the contrary, the golden war flag that Temujin gave to Guan Yu as a keepsake was Temujin's real keepsake. Temujin used a fake core of the law and a fake self-detonation to fool Guan Yu, causing Guan Yu, who could have had a chance to escape, to become a pawn for Temujin to escape from the dimensional barrier. No one else could have such a scheme. It was no wonder that Temujin's core of the law did not have time to self-detonate in the end. It was simply a fake core of the law. Of course, it could not have the power to self-detonate, and could only pretend to be destroyed by the opponent in advance. Alas! This Temujin is cunning, but unfortunately, he did not expect that there would be someone more cunning than him in the world. Longsha Jendi smiled slightly. As a result, on the path that the golden war flag had to take to escape, A void door suddenly opened. Before the Golden War flag could react to what had happened, it was already put into a box by the pirate sword saint who had been lurking there. This was a box specially made of Emperor alloy in the city of London. Once it was locked in such a box, it would be too late for Temujin's core of the law to self-detonate even if it wanted to. Chapter 1239. Congratulations, Your Majesty Longsha. Seeing that the pirate sword immortal had put Temujin's rule core into a box, even Guhan could not help but look a little jealous. Haha. Thank you, brother Guhan, for your reminder. Otherwise, this cunning guy would have escaped. Ha ha ha. Longsha Jendi laughed wildly. No one would have thought that he, Longsha Jendi, would actually catch the rule core of an intact flood-level Yuan Ku. In the entire history of mankind, such a good thing had not happened many times. The rule core was useless to other sword-bearers, but it was especially useful to fairy sword-bearers. This was because fairy sword-bearers could use the rule core to understand the power of rules, thereby increasing their synchronization with emperor sword-bearers. In other words, the rule core could increase the success rate of synchronization between fairy sword-bearers and emperor sword-bearers, and this success rate was not small, at least 5 times. In history, 5 fairy sword-bearers had used the rule core, and as a result, 2 fairy sword-bearers had successfully broken through to emperor sword-bearers. It could be said to be the most precious thing in the world for fairy sword-bearers. However, most of the flood-level Yuan bandits had strong self-esteem. Once they fell to the point where they only had the heart of the rule left, 90% of them would self-destruct to avoid being humiliated by humans, just like what happened to Tesla and Guan Yu. However, it was unexpected that the great Genghis Khan Temujin was such a coward. As a result, Longsha Jendi had benefited from it. As long as it was used properly, there was a high possibility that there would be a new emperor sword-bearer in London in the future. According to Guhan's guess, Longsha Jendi was most likely going to give this rule core to his son, the Sword Immortal. After all, the Sword Immortal was only one step away from becoming a fairy sword-bearer. When Longsha Jendi began to age, the Sword Immortal was about to enter the peak of his life, which would be a perfect replacement for the old and the new, allowing Longsha Jendi's family to dominate London for 2 generations. There was nothing more cost-effective in the world. It was no wonder that when Longsha Jendi saw that the rule core had fallen into his hands, he laughed so arrogantly. Your Majesty. The pirate sword immortal handed the box containing the rule core to Longsha Jendi. Hey, pirate brother, you and I are like brothers, and you are the only fairy sword-bearer in London. I think you should keep this rule core for your own use, so that London, and the whole human race, will have one more emperor sword-bearer. Longsha Jendi said generously, preparing to give this precious rule core to the pirate sword immortal. This surprised everyone who saw this scene, and they admired Longsha Jendi even more. He was actually willing to give such a precious thing to the pirate sword immortal for free. Ahem. The pirate sword immortal coughed a few times and said with great emotion, Your Majesty, I am already 65 years old this year. In another 10 years or so, it will be time for me to be buried. Even if I become an emperor sword-bearer, what's the use? It will just be a waste of God's gift. I think it's better for Your Majesty to keep this treasure. In the future, when the young heroes of London grow up, you can give this rule core to them. This is the most cost-effective thing to do. This. Pirate brother, don't refuse it anymore. You'd better accept it. No, I can't accept it. Longsha Jendi reluctantly put the rule core into his dimensional pocket, looked at Guhan with a wry smile, and said, Hey, pirate sword immortal, I've made a fool of myself in front of you, brother Guhan. By the way, brother Guhan, you are only one step away from becoming a fairy sword-bearer. Moreover, brother Guhan also contributed to the killing of Temujin. Why don't I give this rule core to you, brother Guhan? Since Your Majesty Longsha is so generous, I will accept it without hesitation. Guhan smiled and directly reached for the iron box containing the rule core in Jendi's hand. Ha. Longsha Jendi's face instantly stiffened, and the muscles of his arm holding the box instantly tightened, as if he had an impulse to hit someone. Ha. Ji Han laughed again and again, I was just joking. This battle is all because of your Majesty's efforts. How could I dare to hope for such an important reward? I was just joking with your Majesty. Hey. I said I'll give it to you, so naturally, it will be given to you. There is no difference in the amount of credit, Long Shijendi said with a hollow laugh. Your Majesty, please forgive me for speaking the truth. This heart of law might be useful to some people, but to me, it's worthless. It's not even worth $1. Ji Yuhan smiled. Oh, what do you mean? Long Shijendi asked curiously. Your Majesty, have you forgotten that I have already comprehended the laws? Why would I need this rule core to help me? Guhan's eyes flashed with disdain. Haha, yes, brother Guhan, you are extraordinary. This rule core is indeed worthless for a genius like you, Guhan. Then I will accept it. Long Shijendi was satisfied and put the rule core into his dimensional pocket. At this time, Guan Yu's dimensional vortex had swelled to its limit, and it would be too late to absorb the sword essence inside. Long Shijendi invited Guhan and the pirate sword immortal to absorb the sword essence inside the dimensional vortex together, but he did not expect that Guhan would say to Long Shijendi with a smile, Your Majesty, I have a presumptuous request, I hope your Majesty will agree to it. Say it and let me see, Long Shijendi said. I owe my disciple a lot in the past few years, so I hope that my disciple can have a share of the sword essence inside the dimensional vortex. It can also be regarded as making up for my debt to her, Guhan said with some shame. Haha, of course, this is a small matter, naturally. Long Shijendi agreed without hesitation. A trivial ancient sword-grade swordbearer could at most absorb 1,000 quarks of sword essence, so it was not a big deal. So he naturally agreed. In that case, I will have to trouble your Majesty's sword maiden to go to the entrance of the sword pavilion to pick up my disciple. Otherwise, by the time she comes over, the dimensional vortex will have already disappeared. The entrance of the sword pavilion? Long Shijendi suddenly had a bad idea, but since it had come to this, Long Shijendi could only send his immortal sword-grade sword maiden to pick up the disciple. In less than 2 seconds, the sword maiden directly passed through the void gate and received Lu Shihua. Master. Seeing Guhan appear in front of him, Lu Shihua's mood was extremely excited, and he could not wait to directly throw himself into Guhan's arms. It was just that the other people around made Lu Shihua a little embarrassed to act rashly. Have you finished what I asked Li Bai to tell you? Guhan asked faintly. Yes, it's all done. Lu Shihua nodded. Then what are you still doing here? His Majesty has already shown mercy and let you absorb the sword essence in this dimensional vortex. You still haven't taken out your sword maiden, Guhan said somewhat impatiently. Yes, Master. Lu Shihua stuck out his tongue, and then quickly pulled out a sword from his waist. But this sword was different from Lu Shihua's original double-winged angel sword. This sword actually had 4 pairs of wings on its back. 8-winged angel sword. Seeing this sword, Long Shijendi was shocked, and his face suddenly became ashen. He clearly remembered that this sword was hidden in his sword pavilion in London. How could it suddenly appear in Lu Shihua's hand? Oh. Just now, the matter was a bit urgent and I forgot to inform His Majesty. Guhan showed an apologetic smile. I just sent my disciple to London's sword pavilion. Because His Majesty is fighting, I could only temporarily inform the Pirate Sword Immortal Pavilion's master. I didn't inform His Majesty and synchronized with the Spirit Sword Level Sword Maiden 8-Winged Angel Sword in your sword pavilion. I hope His Majesty can forgive me. Hee. It's nothing. Miss Lu Shihua has the angel bloodline. Apart from her, there is no second person who is qualified to synchronize with this sword. It's only right to give it to her. Long Shijendi laughed dryly a few times. In fact, he also knew that this 8-winged angel sword had no second owner except for Lu Shihua. But this was originally prepared by Long Shijendi as a favor. If Long Shijendi took the initiative to give this 8-winged angel sword to Lu Shihua, it would be equivalent to returning a big favor to Guhan. At least half of the life-saving grace could be offset. But now, this favor had fallen into the hands of the Pirate Sword Immortal. But just now, Miss Lu Shihua was still an ancient sword-level sword wielder. How did she become qualified to synchronize with the spirit sword level 8 winged angel sword in the blink of an eye? Longsha Jendi asked with some pain in the ass. It's like this. The reason why my disciple is stuck at the ancient sword level is because the 4-winged angel sword was stolen 3 years ago, so my disciple can't go any further. Now that the 4-winged angel sword has been retrieved by my sister, plus she first obtained the famous sword level 6 winged angel sword from Yuzhong City. Moreover, the sword element in her body also meets the requirement of 100,000 quarks, so she directly completed the synchronization and coordination. Sorry for making your majesty laugh. Guhan laughed. So that's how it is. It seems that brother Guhan has been prepared for a long time. Everything is in your calculations. Longsha Jendi could do nothing but laugh. He had even brought the sword lady of Yuzhong City with him. Obviously, he had already calculated the angel sword in his sword pavilion. Taking advantage of the fact that he was fighting and had no time to care about the sword pavilion, he had synchronized with the pirate sword immortal and the 8-winged angel sword. At the same time, Longsha Jendi also felt envious in his heart. He admired Lu Shihua's good luck. Not only did she have the angel bloodline, but she also had the care of such a powerful master like Guhan. Except for some setbacks in the first 3 years, it was estimated that her future days would be smooth, without any obstacles along the way. She would smoothly synchronize with the Sword Lady of Immortal Sword level and even the Sword Lady of Emperor Sword level, becoming an Emperor Sword level sword wielder like him. Remembering that when he was young, he had suffered so many hardships and trials to climb to the position of an Emperor Sword level sword wielder. This Lu Shihua could easily reach his position just by relying on his own bloodline and master. Longsha Jendi could not help but be jealous of this. At the same time, Longsha Jendi further thought that Lu Shihua and Guhan were both swordbearers of Yuzhong City. With Guhan's spirit sword level, he could rival the strength of an Emperor Sword level. And Lu Shihua, who was already an Emperor Sword level sword wielder, in the future, Yuzhong City would have 2 Emperor Sword level swordbearers at the same time. In this case, perhaps in the future, Yuzhong City would be the world, and even the powerful Yangjing City would have to stand aside. Thinking of the era when the human world was dominated by Jendi a few decades ago, Longsha Jendi had no other way but to sigh at Yuzhong City's good luck. Longsha Jendi, the pirate sword immortal, Guhan, and Lu Shihua smoothly shared the sword elements in the dimensional vortex. Among them, Longsha Jendi alone got 3.5 million quarks, the pirate sword immortal got 1.5 million quarks, and Guhan and Lu Shihua each took 1 million quarks, which added up to 7 million quarks of sword elements. From this, it could be seen that Guan Yu's strength was above Tesla's. After his death, the sword elements were about 1/3 more than Tesla's. Of course, Longsha Jendi did not know this. He estimated according to his own speed that Guhan and Lu Shihua could absorb at most 200,000 quarks of sword elements, so he felt that Guan Yu's strength was only a little higher than Tesla's. What a lucky guy. In just one day, he crossed from an ancient sword rank swordbearer to a spirit sword rank swordbearer. Not only was Longsha Jendi envious of Lu Shihua's encounter, but even Guhan, who facilitated everything behind the scenes, was also envious of Lu Shihua. Now, as long as Lu Shihua found the 10-winged angel sword, he could smoothly become an immortal sword rank swordbearer, which could be said to be extremely smooth. But when he thought of himself, Guhan could not help but have a headache. Although Guhan now had 2.85 million quarks of sword elements and could also become an immortal sword rank swordbearer, there was a big problem with Guhan's immortal sword lady. I don't know if everyone still remembers the Sword of Victory, which was the Sword of Victory that Guhan spent a 6 revolutions immortal pill to forcibly obtain the sword elements of immortal sword rank, and then synchronize with it. After that, Guhan suffered from the side effects of the Sword of Victory, which led to the appearance of the identity of Jiyu Shen Yuan. Later, as the sword elements in Guhan's body faded, the Sword of Victory, this temporary immortal sword lady, also quieted down again, but it was just silence. In fact, she was already Guhan's immortal sword lady, which was an unchangeable fact. The sword scar of the Sword of Victory in Guhan's Zifu was still there. The problem was with this Sword of Victory. Now, Guhan only needed to hold any part of the Sword of Victory, and he could instantly synchronize with the Sword of Victory again, becoming a true immortal sword lady. This sounded good, but in fact, it was a huge crisis. Don't forget how Guhan was stuck in a semi-synchronized state with the Sword of Victory, unable to advance or retreat. Guhan was now completely different from ordinary sword bearers. Now, Guhan had to synchronize with two sword ladies of the same level in order to continue growing, or else the balance in his body would be broken. And these two sword ladies of the same level were not just any two, they had to be mentally connected. Therefore, there was the story of how Guhan had to think of a way to obtain the celestial extinguished sword. In other words, Guhan's immortal sword lady must be two sword ladies that were mentally connected, or rather, twin sword ladies. Obviously, the Sword of Victory was not such a sword lady. It did not have a sword lady that could be its twin. If Guhan chose to activate the Sword of Victory now, it meant that he would inevitably re-enter the semi-synchronized state. If he couldn't find the sword lady that was the twin of the Sword of Victory, then Guhan would be stuck in this terrible state for the rest of his life. Now, the situation Guhan was facing was, before finding the perfect way to solve the Sword of Victory, Guhan absolutely could not touch the Sword of Victory, nor could he touch the other sword ladies of the immortal sword lady. He could only stay at the level of spirit sword lady, unable to advance or retreat. Chapter 1240. After Ji Han racked his brains, there were only two ways to solve the problem of the Sword of Victory. Either he could find a sword maiden that was twin to the Victory Sword, then Guhan would be able to successfully become an immortal sword wielder. Or he could find a green silk sword and forcefully sever the mark between himself and the Victory Sword. Then he could find two sword maidens that were twin to synchronize with him. From the looks of it, the first solution was impossible. No one had ever heard of a sword maiden that was twin to the Victory Sword. In that case, he could only use the second solution, which was to find the green silk sword and sever the mark between himself and the Victory Sword. This made Ji Han feel like he had returned to 3 years ago. He had returned to the time 3 years ago when he was searching for the green silk sword to sever his connection with the Juzi sword, so that he could synchronize with the King of Yu Gojian sword. However, things had changed. Now, Juzi had become his indispensable sword maiden, and the King of Yu's Gojian sword had become Ku Rokin's sword maiden. He had regained his Chijian sword, and now he yearned for the green silk sword again. Forget it, I still have to kill my way to the Liunyan family and have a decisive battle with Kunzu's sword soul. If I win, the Liunyan family won't dare to not sever my green silk sword, Guhan thought to himself. However, now was not the time to kill his way into the Liunyan family. This was because Guhan believed that he did not have the ability to defeat Kunzu's sword soul. As for twin sword maidens, it was not difficult to find them. After all, the sword tower in Yuzhang City had such a pair, Yuantu and Avici. The East Sea Dragon King, Ao Guang, the West Sea Dragon King, Ao Run, the South Sea Dragon King, Ao Qin, the North Sea Dragon King, Ao Shun. Greetings to our young friend Guhan. While Flowing Maple was thinking about the Victory Sword, the 4 Dragon Kings suddenly walked up to Guhan and took the initiative to greet Guhan. Oh, Junior Guhan greets the 4 Dragon Kings. Guhan's attitude towards the 4 Seas Dragon Kings was rather respectful because Guhan was still no match for the 4 Seas Dragon Kings when they joined forces. Besides, so what if Ji Han had the ability to defeat the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas? On the contrary, without the restraint of the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas, the Sea Clan in the sea would be disadvantageous to humans. The best choice was to keep the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas to restrain the Sea Clan. Therefore, Ji Han had to maintain a respectful attitude towards the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas. Young friend, you're young and extraordinary. You've achieved so much at such a young age. You actually managed to defeat Guan Yu and the other 2. I've only seen one person with such ability in my life, and that's your sword ancestor. As for the heaven-shrouding sword emperor that you guys hold in high regard, I've seen him too. He's just an empty title. He's not even a tenth of what you're capable of, said the 4 Sea Dragon Kings. Zhetian Jendi is just an empty title. He's only 1/10 of me. The words of the Dragon King of the Four Seas made Ji Yuhan feel a little confused. His relationship with Yi Qing could be said to be inextricably messy. It was also because of Yi Qing's various backup plans that he was able to achieve what he had today. It could be said that half of Ji Yuhan's current abilities were due to Yi Qing. Moreover, from the time he spent with Yi Qing, Guhan could feel that Yi Qing was extremely powerful. Even if Guhan became an immortal sword wielder, he would not dare to say that he could defeat Yi Qing. Why did the Four Seas Dragon Kings say that Yi Qing only had 1/10 of his abilities? That's right. Yi Qing is just a despicable person. He borrowed his power in the human world and came to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to ask for the green hair severing. The four of us were afraid of his reputation at first, but when we really fought, we realized that he was just trash. Even the weakest among us, Ao Shun, the Dragon King of the North Sea, easily defeated him and forced him to flee. If it wasn't for the fact that he gave us a lot of benefits as an apology, we would have told everyone that he was just a weakling. Ao Run, the Dragon King of the West Sea, said angrily. What kind of joke is this? Guhan felt even more confused. However, he quickly recalled what had happened in the Rise from the Ground Instance dungeon. Zhe Tianjendi was not one person, but two different people. One was Zhe Tianjendi, who was an old man, and the other was Yi Qing. Moreover, Yi Qing had personally told him that her real title was Sihan Jendi. This seemed to make sense. The person who had suffered losses in the Dragon Palace was clearly Zhe Tianjendi. From what the Four Seas Dragon Kings had said, at that time, Zhe Tianjendi had already become famous, which was what had happened after he had wreaked havoc in the Celestial Court. In other words, at that time, Zhe Tianjendi had most likely separated from Yi Qing. It was Zhe Tianjendi who had come to find the Four Seas Dragon Kings alone, which was why he could not even defeat the Four Seas Dragon Kings. However, why had Zhe Tianjendi come to find black hair severing? Since he had already become an emperor sword wielder, why would he need black hair severing? Could it be that he wanted to completely cut off his relationship with Yi Qing? Guhan hurriedly asked the Four Seas Dragon Kings about Zhe Tianjendi in detail. Unfortunately, the Four Seas Dragon Kings did not know much. They told Guhan everything they could, but they did not allow Guhan to sort out any clues. Of course, Guhan had also asked the Dragon Palace if black hair severing was still there. Unfortunately, the Dragon Palace had said that black hair severing had been sold to Shuehuan Jendi. The Dragon Palace no longer had black hair severing, so Guhan had given up on the idea. Thank you, Your Majesties, for telling me the truth. May I know why Your Majesties are looking for me? Guhan temporarily put Yi Qing's matter aside and asked the Four Seas Dragon Kings about their real purpose. These four old fellows would not look for him for no reason. They must have been looking for him for a reason. The Four Seas Dragon Kings hesitated at the same time and looked at each other. In the end, it was the East Sea Dragon King Ao Guang who spoke. May I ask, little friend Guhan, are the two sword ladies you took out the Celestial Execution Sword Lady and the Celestial Slashing Sword Lady? Yes. Guhan nodded. It seemed like the Celestial Execution Sword and the Celestial Slashing Sword were very famous. Even the Four Seas Dragon Kings had taken the initiative to look for them. So it really is the two sword ladies. The Four Seas Dragon Kings looked at each other excitedly. Then, to Guhan's surprise, they knelt in front of Guhan and said respectfully, Little Dragon King Ao Guang of the East Sea, Dragon King Ao Run of the West Sea, Dragon King Ao Qin of the South Sea, and Dragon King Ao Shun of the North Sea pay their respects to the Celestial Execution Sword Lady and the Celestial Slashing Sword Lady. We sincerely invite the two sword ladies to meet us. The sudden action of the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas instantly attracted the attention of the others. The humans who were cleaning up the mess were stunned on the spot. They did not even know that the things in their hands had fallen into the sea as they watched the scene in the sky in a daze. What had happened? Why were the Four Seas Dragon Kings kneeling in front of Guhan? Isn't this a little too nonsensical? Had the heads of the Four Seas Dragon Kings been smashed by someone? What do we do? These four old dragons want to meet you. Are the two of you going to meet them or not? Upon seeing this scene, Guhan could only helplessly ask the Celestial Execution Sword and Celestial Slashing Sword in his purple palace. I don't wish to meet them. Let them go. Celestial Execution Sword's answer was clean and direct. Sigh. Wait, why chase them away? How about this, Guhan, help us ask the four of them whose side they are on. Celestial Slashing Sword turned to Guhan. Dragon Kings of the Four Seas, please rise. Celestial Slashing Sword Lady has entrusted me with a question. Whose side are the four of you on? Guhan conveyed Celestial Slashing Sword's question to the Four Seas Dragon Kings without missing a single word. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas exchanged a few glances. In the end, the Dragon King of the East Sea, Ao Guang, forced himself to answer, in reply to the two goddesses, of course we are on your side. Is Celestial Slashing Sword Lady asking you the truth? Guhan continued conveying Celestial Slashing Sword's message. How would we dare lie? Apart from standing on the two goddesses' side, which other side can we stand on? Only the goddesses' side will allow us to live. The other side will only lead to death. Ao Guang said wistfully. All right, Celestial Slashing Sword Lady said that if you stand on her side, you will have to listen to my orders from now on. The entire Sea Clan will have to follow my orders. There is no room for disobedience. That way, they will be able to protect your lives in the final battle. If you agree, it will be a happy decision. Guhan was still repeating Celestial Slashing Sword's words. However, Guhan had never expected that Celestial Slashing Sword would request the entire Sea Clan to listen to her orders. Would the Four Seas Dragon Kings really agree to such a request? Guhan expressed his doubts. Indeed, when Ji Yuhan mentioned the Immortal Extinguishing Sword's request, the Four Sea Dragon Kings became very hesitant. This was no longer a decision that could be made with just a few looks. After whispering to each other for a while, the East Sea Dragon King Ao Guang said with some fear, "This matter is very important. We must confirm your identity, otherwise, the four of you are trouble. The ancestral dragon deserves to be killed." Celestial Slashing Sword leaped out of its scabbard and stared fiercely at the Four Seas Dragon Kings with its hands on its hips. Then, with a sweep of the Celestial Slashing Sword, half of the Four Seas Dragon King's dragon horns were sliced off. Oh no! Upon seeing this scene, Guhan immediately entered a state of high alert. He was prepared to fight the Four Seas Dragon Kings at any moment. The Celestial Slashing Sword had silently sliced off the Four Seas Dragon King's dragon horns. One had to know that dragon horns were what the true dragon race valued the most. It was akin to a woman's hair. The Celestial Slashing Sword had sliced off the Four Seas Dragon King's dragon horns in one go. The Four Seas Dragon Kings would probably fight to the death with him. However, something unbelievable happened to Guhan. Not only did the Four Seas Dragon Kings not have any intention of fighting to the death with him, they didn't even show a hint of anger. Instead, their faces were filled with joy, as though they could not wait for the Celestial Slashing Sword to slice off their dragon horns. Greetings, Lady Celestial Slashing Sword. Thank you for your bestowment. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas once again knelt in front of Ji Yuhan, causing everyone at the side to stare at them again. Get up. Get up. There's no point in kneeling here and there. The four of us are not the 12 useless disciples of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, nor are we the Jade Emperor's servants. We sisters don't need such things. The Celestial Slashing Sword helped the Four Seas Dragon Kings up. Speak. Do you agree to my request? Yes. Yes. The Four Seas Dragon Kings immediately answered without any hesitation. The four of us swear by the ancestral dragon soul that as long as we are alive, we will obey Lord Guhan's orders. The entire sea is Lord Guhan's world. The four of us are willing to serve Lord Guhan as the Sea Emperor, ruling over everything within the Four Seas. From this day forth, Lord Guhan's orders are the highest orders of the entire sea race. Even if the seas run dry and the rocks crumble, we will never go back on our vow today. Does this mean that I control the entire sea race? Seeing this scene, Guhan could not help but feel a little dizzy. He had never imagined that he would gain the allegiance of the Four Seas Dragon Kings in the blink of an eye and become the Sea Emperor. This was something that humans did not even dare to think about. If I want you to lift the ban on the sea from now on and let the sea be a smooth path for humans, Human ships can sail freely on the sea, and the sea race is not allowed to do anything harmful to humans. Can you agree to it? Guhan hesitated for a while and asked the Four Seas Dragon Kings. No problem, we can guarantee it. The East Sea Dragon King nodded without hesitation. However, he quickly said with some embarrassment, however, the sea race is only a deterrent to the Dragon Clan. Where the Dragon Clan is present, the other sea race will definitely not dare to harm humans. However, if the Dragon Clan is not present, we can't control the behavior of the sea race. After all, they are all Yuan Ku. I understand. Guhan nodded. Anyway, try your best. If you can save someone's life, help me save someone's life. As your majesty, the Sea Emperor. The Four Seas Dragon Kings answered. These four old fellows are serious. Guhan saw that the expressions of the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas were very sincere, without any fake emotions. He sighed in his heart, but at the same time, he was filled with emotions. What exactly was the identity of the four immortal exterminating sword sisters? All right, if there's nothing else, you can go back. We sisters will never go back on our promises. When the time comes for the final battle, as long as you fulfill your promise, as long as we sisters are alive, we will protect your life. Thank you, Lady Absolute Immortal. Thank you, Lady Absolute Immortal. After hearing the immortal exterminating sword's promise, the Four Seas Dragon Kings were immediately overjoyed. The four old fellows hugged each other to celebrate. Guhan suddenly thought that if these four old fellows hugged each other in their true dragon form, wouldn't they become a Tianjin hemp flower? Let's go. Just as Guhan was about to leave the crazy Four Seas Dragon Kings, West Sea Dragon King Ao Run suddenly woke up and walked to Guhan's side with a flattering smile. May I ask Lord Guhan, is that Miss Gu Shahan your elder sister? She's my elder sister. Why are you looking for my elder sister? Guhan said indifferently. Guhan could announce to the world that he had two sword maidens at the same time, but he would never announce that Gu Shenyuan and Gu Shahan were both him. This was related to Guhan's face. Unless his life was in danger, Guhan would never admit this to others. It's like this, I don't know if Lord Guhan knows, but my family's good-for-nothing little 28 was once saved by your elder sister. West Sea Dragon King Ao Run said nervously. Oh, I know. Is there a problem? Guhan couldn't help recalling the appearance of that good-for-nothing dragon. There's no problem. It's just that ever since my good-for-nothing brat was saved by Miss Gu Shahan, he missed her so much that even I, as his father, can't stand it anymore. Originally, us four brothers came here with an important purpose, which was to propose to Miss Gu Shahan on behalf of my good-for-nothing brat. Now that Miss Gu Shahan isn't here, I can only tell Lord Guhan. Can you tell Miss Gu Shahan? My good-for-nothing brat is really impossible. Don't even think about it. Before the West Sea Dragon King Ao Run could finish speaking, Guhan's face stiffened, and he bluntly rejected him. But Lord, my brat, don't say any more. Otherwise, I won't be the Ocean Emperor anymore. You can find whoever you want to be the Ocean Emperor. I won't play with you anymore. Guhan's face was extremely ugly. Yes. What else could West Sea Dragon King Ao Run say? He could only retreat with his tail between his legs. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.